Number 5, the crafts shot down. It has been a huge year for UFO enthusiasts like yours truly. Earlier, we got the release of the UAP reports from the Pentagon, which were basically the wildest documents in US government history, where the Pentagon confirmed they've been researching UFOs and kind of just slid it under the door like nobody cared. It made UFOs more than tinfoil hat talk, almost made discussions about it reputable. And I guess since then, that wasn't enough to keep us all entertained. As of last week, we've turned things up even more, since we've had 2 mysterious aircrafts shot down, and the United States and Canadian governments are being pretty cagey about it. So let's run through a quick timeline of what hopefully doesn't turn out to be Independence Day, and let's all pray we didn't kickstart an intergalactic war. On February 10th, a US fighter jet brought down a currently unidentified object soaring over the coast of Alaska. The object shattered into pieces after being shot down and was confirmed to most likely not be a balloon, according to the Department of Defense. I guess that's good to know, or not at all, since it doesn't answer anybody's questions. A White House official referred to the object as being the size of a small car, with enough room for a family of 4 to 5 aliens to fit comfortably, and you can put the back seat up and put some stuff in the storage. This would already be enough to fuel speculation for 10 years, and then literally the next day, February 11th, another unidentified flying object was shot down, this time over Canada, around the Yukon. That's the province that borders Alaska. A US flown F-22 Raptor shot down the second object, which was described as smaller than the first and cylindrical in nature. Okay, well, that's all the weird stuff that happened this week. Nope, because on the 12th, another strange object was shot down over Lake Huron. An object that first had appeared over Montana appeared on Sunday, which was then shot down. It was octagonal, apparently, and it had strings hanging off of it, but it wasn't carrying anything, so no one knows why. Maybe it was just an Amazon drone. Now, things keep getting weirder, I swear to you. Listen to this next part, you're not gonna believe this. When an Air Force commander, Glenn Van Herk, was asked directly on whether or not he thought any of these objects were alien in nature, he said, "I haven't ruled anything out at this point." What? I can't even speak, but the current sitting government officials are like, hey, maybe it's aliens, shrugging their shoulders. Is this it, guys? Is this it? They didn't specify whether or not these objects posed a threat. They said they just posed a threat to civilian air traffic, but the White House did say that these objects were broadcasting signals. I would say watch this space for updates, but really just like watch regular space. At this rate, there's gonna be an alien every single day. But if you can't wait for any more and you just wanna watch alien videos all day, I completely agree with you. That's what I do every day and it's great. We've got loads of alien and UFO vids, NASA conspiracies, and hey, if that's not your jam, we got scary stories, horror movies, monsters, cryptids, true crime, baby, we got just about everything spooky under the sun and above it. So stay subscribed to Top 5 Scary, but most importantly, stay scared. But subscribe after, we gotta finish this video first. We got way more alien footage to get through. Moving on. Number 4, the Picket Post, Arizona sighting. Well, with all of this stuff flying around in the sky these days, is it any surprise that people are catching more weird footage than ever before? The UFO subreddit has been lit up like fireworks on the 4th of July with all kinds of alien sightings from all across the globe. Come take a look at some of the best ones I've seen this week. Hopefully they're new to you as well. Our first sighting comes to us from a Redditor by the username of MaxKeller96, and they posted a short clip from Picket Post, Arizona that's got us talking. Take a quick little look-see. This is one of the better ones I've seen in a minute. Here's what the Redditor had to say about the clip. My sister, dad, and I were out hiking near Picket Post when one of us noticed something glimmering near the mountain, so we stopped to take a look at it. All I could make out was that it was a small bright dot in the sky. After a good 15 seconds of staring, I started recording. It then dropped what looked like 2 flares, though my sister swears she counted at least 3. Up until that point, I thought it might have been a helicopter, as there's all sorts of army stuff out there, but there's no way anything can accelerate that fast. We all lost sight of it nearly instantly after the video cuts, and we were pretty freaked out about it. I've replayed it about 100 times, and I've tried showing it to everyone, and no one has any idea other than that it could be a super advanced drone. So, if you think you know, please let me know. Well, you heard the guy. If you think you have any ideas to what's going on, you comment down below or jump into the Reddit thread and participate in the UFO discussion. The UFO subreddit is great, and they're very friendly to new visitors. That's like their whole thing. They really want to welcome new visitors. Number 3, the San Diego sighting. The San Diego and Tijuana sighting, to be more accurate. Our next entry is a pretty interesting one because it isn't just one offhanded sighting that happened in the middle of the night by somebody stumbling out in a bathrobe who's half awake, but it's a corroborated sighting that was happening seemingly mainly across the cities of Tijuana and San Diego. And it wasn't even while Comic-Con was happening, so this isn't part of an extremely elaborate campaign for Ant-Man 4 or anything. So we either have a mass hallucination on our hands because there was something in the water, or there's some questions in the sky that need to get answered. So we'll play a few seconds of some of these clips and help you come to your own conclusions. On September 19th, 2022, several of these videos were captured of these bizarre light patterns darting across the sky. This is a massive sighting, so we can't quite dismiss this as a trick of the light or one isolated incident. There was definitely something weird flying up and around. What makes this kind of notable, besides from, you know, how well documented this is I would say the pattern of the lights. They don't really follow like a flare pattern at all, so I don't think it's something that was dropped from an aircraft. When you watch it, they almost kind of seem to move in like a perfect unison, like flashy geese. The original poster who posted the compilation clip to Reddit added as well that another oddity they noted was that after the lights were seen and military fighter jets surrounding and circling the skies, probably to round up whatever was going on. So, comment section, I'll throw it back to you again. What do you think? Spy drones, weird paranormal lights, or is it just visitors? I think it's alien tourists who heard what a great time a weekend in Tijuana is and want to check it out. Could you imagine if aliens do come to Earth, but they're not really interested in like diplomatic relations or starting a war or anything? They're just like, we heard you guys party hard and we want in on that. Number 2, Michigan and Grand Park. Another very weird sighting coming from Reddit. This one was posted not even 2 days ago by a Redditor with a very funny username I can't read out loud on YouTube, but just know it was very funny. At first, it kind of looks like a piece of litter that somehow managed to get all the way up in the sky and is fluttering and darting all around. But if you take a closer look at it, it really seems like it's moving like it's being controlled. People in the comments of the subreddit quickly pointed out that a similar object to this showed up in Australia when this one's filmed in Michigan. Isn't that odd? 2 of these similar reports happening on almost opposite ends of the world. People in the subreddit theorized that this object in the video is one of the ones that was shot down over Lake Huron, which definitely makes sense. Lake Huron is, you know, in Michigan. Could this be some of the last footage of this alien craft before it got burnt up? From this clip, I would say to me personally, it looks like some sort of hyper advanced drone, maybe more than a piloted craft. It looks very small, so unless there's like a really teeny tiny little alien inside there, I don't know. But with all cell phone footage, you know, it's kind of impossible to ascertain the size of the thing. I think this one's pretty conclusive personally, and if this really is footage of the object that was shot down over Lake Huron, I would say the United States and Canadian governments agree with my assessment as well. But as all of these clips, please let me know what you think it is. If it's a drone or an alien or maybe just a really impressive kite that accidentally got destroyed. Number 1, the Columbia sighting. Now, our number 1 sighting is another international one. Hey, you think aliens are only gonna show up around North America? Come on, expand your worldview a bit. If aliens invade, they're gonna go after the whole planet. There's a whole lot to see, a whole lot of things they could burn down with lasers. And it seems like they were curious about the countryside of Colombia, because this footage out of Bogota, Colombia is truly out of this world. Seriously, this is like the most impressive UFO footage I've ever seen in my life. It was captured by a pro photographer who sent it along to a friend of his who's a YouTuber. Hey, reach out, let's collab. In the hopes of getting it to more eyes and people who could analyze it. And yeah, seriously, this is one of the most convincing things I've ever seen. Take a look. Now, I don't want to, you know, poke the bear too much. I know this sounds kind of annoying. I am almost of the belief that this footage is simply too good. I wouldn't outright throw it away and discard it, but I can't remember the last time I've ever seen UFO footage where the craft in this question is this clear and easy to make out. You can almost like make out sci-fi parts of it, you know? It looks to me like it wouldn't look too out of place in a cool video game like a Halo or something. If anyone's a Metroid fan, it reminds me a lot of like the ship that Samus flies around in. I'm just excited because they put Metroid Prime back out there. I think this raises kind of an interesting question and sort of a little like food for thought for debate. As camera quality improves and the average person is now at all time carrying with them a camera that rivals most professional quality, no doubt we're gonna start seeing more stuff like this. There's gonna be an influx of footage that starts to look much clearer, which then ironically ends up getting dismissed because it just looks too good and we assume it's been faked. We're used to blurry blobs shooting across the sky, and I think that's what we kind of think UFOs look like. It's a bit of a weird horseshoe where you kind of want alien footage to look bad so it's more believable. I don't know, maybe I'm just rambling, maybe it all makes sense, but let me know what you think about this one. I think this is absolutely nuts, and I think this is the most exciting time to be into UFOs and UAPs as a whole, because it really feels like we're getting a breakthrough pretty soon, but maybe I just want to believe. Number 5, let's start off with a bang and get a good one for you right off the bat. Usually I like to save these ones for last, but with this compilation, pretty much all of the sightings I've found for you today are winners. This clip is short and sweet, so let's play as much of it as we can. Posted to Twitter from the account UFO Twitter. From what we can make out, we see something barreling through the skies at top speeds, looking faster than just about anything any human tech could put out. It's got a bit of like a football shape to it almost, and I'll shout out my favorite comment on the video underneath, which says, looks like Uncle Rico finally threw that football over the mountain. Little Napoleon Dynamite throwback for you. Whatever it is definitely looks weird. You know, it looks to me more like it's possibly some hyper advanced spycraft or military drone than it could be any weather balloon. Having watched it roughly 30 million times over, pausing every frame like I'm a CSI investigator and I'm pressing my nose right up against the monitor, I noticed that there's a white curved surface on the black shell of the craft, almost looking like it could be a dome for a pilot. I can't make it anything on the inside, of course, but it does give off the impression that the craft is manned or alien. I don't know what the correct verbiage is here. Something else I noticed in my freeze frame play-by-play of the video is that it almost looks as if the craft has some sort of writing on the back of it. You know, if it was just CGI, I doubt that someone would go to that length just to fool some folks on Twitter, but hey, never doubt the power of boredom and access to video editing software. So, folks back at home, what do we think about this one? Spy plane, some new advanced military technology, your run-of-the-mill balloon, or just some very, very convincing computer handiwork? And if you're looking for more UFO clips to squint at, well, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. Just in this one series of videos alone, I've collected 20 clips of UFOs, all from this year, that you should check out. And again, that's just this series alone. If this is your first time coming on in, welcome. You'll see we've got videos on cursed objects, ghosts, paranormal activities, cryptids, and honestly a whole lot more. Just about everything scary under the sun. There's a world of scares out there, so subscribe, stay scared, but check that out after this video, okay? We worked really hard on this one. Number 4, Bondi Beach. Our next video comes to us from the land down under, so you might need to flip your phone or your monitor, or your tablet or whatever upside down to get a good look at the UFO. Maybe that'll help. See if that gets it there for you. Caught on Bondi Beach by TikTok user DJ Just, we've got a pretty clear view of something strange flying across the beautiful blue Australian sky. Now in this clip we can see something shiny, round, and reflective making its way up there, tailed behind by a black helicopter. Looks to be kind of small, maybe the size big enough for one person or maybe 3 or 4 little green men depending on how compact they are. I want to know if that helicopter is a coincidence or if it's responding to this UAP, you know, coming in to recover it, make contact. Now commenters on the video suggested that it could very well be a weather balloon passing through, and it's definitely likely. That's what it turns out to be, like 99.9% of all UFO sightings. But if it was a weather balloon, you know, surely it would have been shot down during that little welcoming party where we were shooting down weather balloons all over the globe, right? Kidding. Another commenter suggested kind of reasonably that it could be a plane because there is a military base fairly close by to Bondi Beach, which would make some sense. Might even explain that helicopter coming in near the end there. Unfortunately, this clip is a little more zoomed out than some of the other ones on here, so it's not the easiest to say what's going on here, but I kind of feel like that's half the fun with UFO clips, isn't it? You know, trying to figure out what's going on. It's like a little guessing game. Let's hear what you all think down there. Is this aliens trying to touch down in Sydney? Or just something perfectly reasonable? I know which one I would infinitely prefer it to be. It's the aliens, in case you were wondering. It's aliens. Number 3, Canada. I had to include this next clip. I just had to. Yes, it's a very cool clip, but mostly it was taken from my hometown, Mississauga, baby. No one famous has ever come from there, so there might be a halfway decent chance I could be Mississauga's biggest star as I spend my days endlessly watching the stars. Enough talk about the Greater Toronto Area's greatest borough. Let's take a look at some more UAP clips. Coming in next is a clip posted to Reddit, simply titled, "Weird Object Seen Flying Over Mississauga," and it is hard to disagree. Why don't you take a little look-see for me? I mean, look at it. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say that just looking at it won't tell you. what on earth is going on here? What I love about this clip is that this one doesn't even remotely look like anything else I've seen in a minute. This doesn't look like a weather balloon or a flying saucer. I don't even know where you'd start describing this one, really. This one looks like it's a UFO Rorschach test, I think. You take a look at it and reveal some element of your personality. I kind of see a little spaceman, like a little Among Us guy, hovering around on a jetpack. The way it moves really gets me too. It seems erratic and alive, less like it's being controlled and more like something's fighting the controls here. Now, I always like to listen to both sides of every story when it comes to UFO sighting content, and one user in the comments here suggested that he was pretty certain that this was just a Mr. Peanut balloon being let loose, and I have to admit, I kind of see it. I don't know if you want to throw up a photo of Mr. Peanut here. I just think it's absolutely hilarious if this UFO sighting is really just a sighting of a giant floating lagoon. I'll leave it to my commenters to decide. You're my best and brightest. How are we feeling on this clip? Is this something weird in the sky? Proof of travelers from beyond the stars experimenting with some new technology that we couldn't possibly understand? Bigger than any of us? Bigger than this galaxy? Or is this just a bit of advertising for a salty snack from the Planters Corporation? Either truth is horrifying. Number 2, best UFO clip. Our next video was posted to TikTok by the user UFO Tracker. Good, we need somebody tracking that. And the caption says it's the best UFO sighting caught on camera. It's definitely pretty good, I'll give him that. But I'm putting it at the number 2 spot if for nothing else to keep UFO Tracker humble. You know, I want to keep you working hard. But for what it's worth, this is definitely a great clip. Why don't you take a look for me? We can see a flying saucer type looking UFO floating around in the sky, almost looking a bit like a perfect sphere. You know, it looks like it's got a glowing light in the middle. If anyone out there is an Apex Legends fan, immediately I said it looks exactly like a cargo bot, and you should consider shooting it down for some loot. And someone in the comments said the exact same thing, so hey, gamer minds think alike, or however that saying goes. Just as it seems like we might be able to get a good glimpse of whatever is happening up there in the sky, a fleet of what looks like a bunch of military vessels show up, presumably just to take care of what is just a weather balloon, right? Now, a lot of people in the comments on this one were more skeptical than usual, I noticed, with most of the commenters suggesting that this was either a balloon or a drone. One of the comments posted bemoaning how good CGI is getting, saying, I don't believe anything I see on video anymore. Another one saying, with how good CGI is getting, it's harder and harder to tell the real from the fakes. I mean, I get it, we are getting pretty good. I'm not even a real person, I'm just an AI generation that does these videos for you. This clip does look pretty fantastical. The only trouble is I couldn't really find a location of where this was happening. If this was footage of one of those strange objects that have been shot down recently over the sky in the US or not, who knows? Maybe this footage was absolutely never meant to be seen, and I just got the whole office marked for surveillance, as if we're not already. My Google search history is enough to have me on like 4 different agency watch lists. It's nothing but alien videos, skinwalkers, Bigfoot sightings, and recommendations for local frozen yogurt places. Number 1, above the Pentagon. Now, you know I try to save the best for last for you guys. So here's one that I thought really stood out. I like to give you guys a little reward for sitting through the video. Good on you. Someone was recording driving down near Washington, D.C., and they spotted something incredibly bizarre moving through the clouds by the Pentagon of all places. It's hard to make out at all what's happening here, but in the clouds we can see something gigantic, like behemoth size. Almost looking like a pyramid or an Imperial Star Destroyer floating through the clouds. It seems too as if it's almost like cloaking in and out sometimes. Maybe I'm just crazy, maybe I'm too tired, maybe I've had too much coffee or not enough. But man, I love a UFO clip where while you're watching it, you just scratch your head and throw your arms up and go, yeah, I have absolutely no idea what's going on here. That could definitely be aliens. This giant cheese wedge shaped thing in the sky certainly raises some eyebrows. It's way too big to be a drone. It's way too triangular to be a balloon. So just what is it, eh? Something about it being near the Pentagon too also sets off more than a few alarms in my head. Could it be that, you know, whatever this is trying to make contact with the people who'd be most likely to be reaching out? What's interesting too is triangular UFOs actually come up way more often than you think. I'd say more than flying saucers even. As someone who's seen maybe, 30,000 UFO clips in my lifetime, that's a rough estimate, I can tell you a lot of the really, really good ones and encounters describe these big big triangular ships like this. Now, commenters on this video were fairly stumped, with most just agreeing in amazement that whatever this was that was being caught on camera was definitely head-turning. A pretty funny comment that stood out for me on this one was someone asking, if you saw this, why wouldn't you pull over? More important than whenever you were going. I kind of agree. Maybe we could have had the perfect UFO evidence footage if the driver was just willing to stop in the middle of the highway and get out and start recording. Some people are so inconsiderate. Number 5, Las Vegas body cam. My dear ghouls, things are heating up in the sky lately and the whole world is coming down bad with alien fever. If you're a UFO enthusiast, the odds are very good you've heard a thing or two about the recent sighting in Las Vegas. That's kind of building up to be a modern day Roswell with all the conspiracy and cover-up allegations. NASA's planetary defense officer, which side note, I did not know was a real job, told Motherboard, a branch of Vice News, that a green fireball observed last month was not a UFO, but rather a small meteor less than a meter in size that landed smack dab in somebody's backyard. Now, the Las Vegas police officers who responded to the call say they didn't find any aliens in a manhunt, or alien hunt, I suppose is probably more accurate, but they do hope to find them in the future, citing the city's close proximity to Area 51 as a source of speculation. Now, the problem is that footage went wildly viral over the internet when a police officer's body cam was uploaded. We've got a little bit of this footage for you here today. It's kind of hard to make anything out of it, like most blurry alien footage, but it's fun to let our speculations run wild, and this TikToker seems adamant that you can see an alien over one of the cop's shoulders. Personally, I think it does look a bit just like a light or like a headlight or something, but you let me know what you feel like you see. The case has been captivating, with the callers, the 911 callers, claiming that they saw tall, non-human entities in their backyard with big glowing eyes looking at them. So what do you think, my fair and trusted viewers? Do you think these aliens got lost on the way to Area 51 to meet their friends and crash landed in somebody's backyard? Or was it just a meteor? Or did the aliens come from the meteor and the meteor itself was the UFO? Truly, who is to say? Who is to know? Hopefully we find out soon enough, and when we do, you better believe that I'll be the first to tell you. And if you're looking for way more videos about all things UFO and alien, oh my good gosh, do we have a lot of that on the channel for you to enjoy. Everything from conspiracies, cover-ups to UFO sightings, we've got it. If you're sick of hearing about little green men, we've got all sorts of things on crime, conspiracy, everything scary. It's on Top 5. So hit subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell as well, and don't miss a single thing, but you gotta do that at the end of this video for me, okay? Because I got 4 more UFO sightings coming up for you right now. Number 4, the Pentagon. We are at a truly exciting time to be an enthusiast of UFOs and aliens. It feels more so than any other point in human history that the discussion around aliens and UFOs is leaving the fringe sciences and starting to become accepted, commonplace by respectable, employed people, not just folks wearing tinfoil. Recently, the Pentagon released a video of a reported UFO zipping around near an Air Force drone and revealed footage to, quote the Pentagon, everyone thought was truly anomalous, which is government speak for we don't know what the fuck this is. At the time, the object appeared to be moving with something propelling it forward, but a later determination would show that it didn't, which baffled and puzzled the analysts, as usually something propels you forward in the air. Now, this hearing was very interesting for a few reasons, but foremost, it allowed us a little bit of insight into how government agencies go about treating UFO sightings. We learned they categorize them first by what they most likely are, starting with the obvious things like planes or balloons, which account for like 99% of all UFO sightings. And then when it's something they truly cannot immediately identify, they prioritize where was it found? How is the object maneuvering? Does it seem like it's being driven? Control. Does it seem as if it has a payload? Does it have something attached to it? The hearing started by saying that the Pentagon currently doesn't believe that they have any definitive proof of extraterrestrial life on Earth, but concluded by saying that we'll be getting another disclosure document coming soon, possibly even as early as July. So we have huge, exciting things on the horizon coming up in July, and I'm not just talking about the Barbie movie. Number 3, Jorge Ara. Is it just me, or are things getting crazier? Maybe I'm watching more UFO footage as part of my job, but it seems like every day we see more UFO sightings, like they're doubling, tripling over what they used to be. Yeah, admittedly, everybody carries a camera in their back pocket now, but it does seem like more people are checking out the planet. Ever since that streak in February, I feel like it's been an arms race for the coolest UFO footage. While pilot Jorge Ara captures what some are describing as the best UFO footage ever, whatever, but I'll let you be the judge of that. He uploaded the video online, where it was found by an account called The Hood's Finest, where the clip went wildly viral on Instagram. Thank you, The Hood's Finest, one of the most trusted sources of journalism in these dark times. Let's take a look. It's definitely mysterious. That much I can say with complete confidence. It's really hard to tell what that was, but the way it speeds forward without any visible exhaust does make it seem highly suspicious. You can't make any details on that craft at all. Now, Arteaga claims this was the most frightening experience of his life, and it's really not hard to see why. A circular, spherical, strange object flew directly in front of his plane, then whizzed by his window. Whizzed, like, you know what I meant. I shouldn't have used that word. Arteaga and his co-pilot were flying towards Santa Fe when they first noticed the strange object coming towards them. The pilots believed that whatever they saw was non-human in nature, and definitely not a balloon or another aircraft. Arteaga claims that the aircraft was traveling at an incredible speed of 300 kilometers an hour. I don't know how many miles an hour that is for Americans. You guys are gonna have to calculate that on your own. With the temperature at the time of the flight falling close to 5 degrees Celsius. With all that being said, it seems less likely that it's a bird or a balloon, and possibly something far more mysterious. As always, I love to hear your guys' opinion on stuff like this, so feel free to debate away in the comments if you think you've got an idea or an angle on this that I'm not seeing. We need as many eyes on this as possible. Of course, you can also just, I don't know, tell me something nice about your day. Tell me something that made you smile today. I love hearing about that too. Number 2, Chad Underwood. I think by now, if you're subscribed to the channel, and I hope you are, you've heard a thing or two about the Tic Tac UFOs that the Navy released videos of. In a lot of ways, these videos were kind of one of the first big steps for this recent surge of UFO, UAP stuff being taken kind of seriously, with these baffling videos leaked by the Navy that no one could explain. Although they were taken years and years ago, back in the halcyon days of 2004, the pilot who took the video has rarely spoken out about his experiences at all, for the understandable fear that he'd be lumped in with, quote, the little green men crazies that are out there. Well, I'm one of them, Chad Underwood, and I'm ready to believe you. Oh, Chad Underwood, that's the guy who filmed it. I don't know if I said that before. The story of the Tic Tac UFO began on November 10th, 2004, when radio operator Kevin Day reported seeing something odd and slow flying around the San Diego coast. It was moving approximately 140 miles an hour at a height of nearly 30,000 feet, so definitely not like any bird that I've ever heard of, and probably unlikely to be balloons. Commander David Fravor of the Black Aces identified the 40-foot-long white oblong-esque object hovering and exhibiting no exhaust, propulsion, but seemingly darting itself forward at impossible velocities. It was Chad Underwood's footage that got shared and went viral. Via infrared camera pods mounted on the plane, we get sightings of these mysterious Tic Tacs in action. And I wish I had something different to tell you for the end of this point, something a bit more dramatic and exciting, but nearly a decade later, and we are still absolutely no closer to understanding just what happened here, what's happening in these videos, what these crafts are, but maybe we'll get there soon. Like I said, there's supposed to be a document coming up in July that's going to reveal all sorts of new research and information the Pentagon's been working on, and maybe that will be the big one, or maybe it'll just also be nothing like it usually turns out to be. But who knows? And number 1, California Army base. We all wonder if military bases are hiding advanced technology, right? Like all of us do that, it's not just me. Like what kind of secrets could be buried underneath Area 51? Wouldn't you want to know? It definitely seems like visitors from other worlds are just a bit curious too, as there was a mass sighting of possible UFOs out in the California desert, right above a military base, one Camp Wilson. Was it a sign of visitors scouting out the area, or technology from within being reverse engineered by the American government? Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp are a pair of ufologists, and they revealed the footage on their podcast, saying that the video and photos were shot all the way back in April 2021, but didn't appear until now, where a series of mysterious lights manifested above the base for 9 minutes, prompting the Marines to launch a significant air and ground response. You know, just in case this turned out to be like an Independence Day kind of sitch. The Marines fired flares at the UFO, and the craft disappeared just before the flares could illuminate what they were. Classic, that's just like every single UFO story, you know, right before the good part. The hosts of the podcast go on to say that there was no media coverage whatsoever of the incident. I mean, I don't really remember anybody talking about this in April 2021, but I also don't remember April 2021, so I'm not a trusted source. But since then, nothing really has come out about it. They got the tip from someone at the base, from a person who was pretty high up, they quote. The tip was that there was more to this story that was being led on. Now, some viewers, some astute alien fans have pointed out a noticeable similarity between this incident and the Phoenix Light event in 1997, where a series of strange lights hovered over the city of Phoenix, witnessed by multiple people in the city, but unknown to everyone and to this day unsolved. So what happened here? Just one more mystery we'll never get an answer to? I'm not sure, but I'll never stop looking. The truth is out there, and I want to believe.
Number 5, KTH Arnold. Let me know if I got my math wrong. What he said he saw, and spent the rest of his life trying to explain though, added the words flying saucer to the vocabularies of millions of people around the world. That June afternoon, Arnold took off from Chehalis, Washington. Please tell me if I got that right, I swear I looked it up. On his way to an air show in Pendleton, Oregon, with a planned fuel stop at Yakima, Washington. He was an experienced pilot with 4,000 hours of flying time logged, and a member of an Idaho search and rescue unit. He was piloting a single-engine Call Air A2 light airplane. Skies were clear and the winds were light, so he planned to detour a bit en route. A U.S. Marine Corps Curtiss C-46 commando transport had crashed with 32 U.S. Marines on board somewhere near his eastward course, and he wanted to find the aircraft and claim a $5,000 reward, which, hey, money also motivates me. I get it. Shortly before 3 o'clock, as Arnold circled his plane about 20 miles west of Mount Rainier, searching for the C-46, he saw a bright flash to the northeast. Now it startled him. He assumed it was just some military lieutenant out with a shiny P-51, and he had caught the reflection of the sun hitting the wings of his plane. But after more flashes appeared, Arnold ruled out, that could be the answer. He claimed that the, flashes emanated from 9 shiny objects flying in an, formation about 5 miles long. He described each object as circular, about 100 feet across, and with no actual tail. The objects periodically flipped, banked, weaved side to side, kind of like the tail of a kite. The formation was crossing in front of Arnold, and he decided to time its passage from Mount Rainier to Mount Adams. He calculated the objects were flying at about 1,200 miles per hour, 2 times faster than any airplane known at the time. Now, months would pass before Colonel Chuck Yeager flew the Bell X-1 rocket airplane to a speed of 700 miles per hour, and exceeded the speed of sound. Just for reference. Arnold emphatically denied that he initially described the objects as flying saucers, but as Megan Garber wrote in her June 15th of 2014 article for The Atlantic, sources at the time do credit Arnold with using the terms saucer, disc, and pie pan in his description of the objects he had seen. So don't try and backtrack, dude. We have receipts. He told his story to reporters Bill Paquette and Nolan Skiff of the East Oregonian newspaper the day after his sighting. Now, Skiff used the words saucer-like aircraft when he published a short print article that same day. After suggesting to Arnold that a wire story might generate comments from the military on flights of experimental aircraft that could explain his sighting, Paquette published a brief story picked up by the Associated Press wire service, using the words 9 bright saucer-like objects to describe what Arnold said he saw. So by that afternoon, the tale that he had seen flying saucers kinda spread nationwide. The Associated Press gets around. A radio host interviewing Arnold on June 26 noted how rapidly the story was shared, saying the Associated and United Press all over the nation have been after this story. It's been on every newscast, over the air, and in every newspaper I know of. The Chicago Sun ran the headline saying, supersonic flying saucers sighted by the Idaho pilot. What do you know? Arnold became a media sensation, but he didn't want the attention. Now at this point, I'm sure you're wondering, okay, Alexa, shut up. Why does this relate to Project Blue Book? Well, this was the incident that started the entire investigative process. This is the whole reason for Project Blue Book. And to this day, we've never had a concrete answer about what he saw. Make of that what you will. Number 4, the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Many folks believe a UFO and its extraterrestrial crew crash landed in the New Mexico desert near Roswell on July 2nd of 1947. Many folks, including me. Now, we also believe the site was cleaned up by the Air Force from the nearby Roswell Army Air Force Base. Eyewitnesses reported that 3-foot-tall, gray-skinned aliens passed away in the crash, and according to Lauren Coleman, the co-author of Weird Ohio, them and their space vessel were shipped off to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base's notorious Hangar 18, which was the home base for Project Blue Book. And here's the thing, everybody's been trying to get in those doors ever since. Senator Barry Goldwater supposedly asked USAF General Curtis LeMay if he could see what was inside, and LeMay not only told him, you're not getting in, don't ask me ever again. Which, if that's coming from a government official, it's a little scary. Now, the Roswell crash wasn't the only extraterrestrial crash in the US at the time. Some allege there were more before 1952 that were covered up, and all the debris, and their pilots, with blue-green skin this time, were all carted off to, you guessed it, Wright-Pat. One of the crashes apparently held as many as 16 alien bodies. That's a lot of bodies. Now, another crash yielded a ship made of lightweight material, impenetrable by any earthly means. Now, whenever a UFO crash happens, the wreckage is sent to Wright-Pat to be reverse engineered, if Area 51's too busy, because sometimes they're overflowing with crafts. Some believe technologies that we've learned from UFOs at Right Pat include fiber optics, lasers, night vision, integrated circuits, particle beams, you name it. Now in other news, Henry H. Arnold was the only person to ever be dubbed General of the Air Force, so as a major, I swear it's relevant, he once lived on a house near Huffman Prairie, which has since been named after him, which is where the Wright brothers worked on their planes, which is now, yes I know, the Wright Pratt Air Force Base. I swear, I get to my points. It takes me a minute. So for many years, there's visitors that have reported strange noises, objects moving on their own, odd shadows, and other phenomena. Heck, that famous show, you know, Ghost Hunters, we've all watched it. Yeah, they visited the Arnold house and found that at least 5 entities live in there. The Ghost Hunters heard sounds from the bathroom, folks laughing in the living room, dining room, specters turning on lights. Now if we want to talk about specifically haunted artifacts, parts from Lady Be Good, a B-24 that disappeared during a run on Italy, are said to rearrange themselves. The POW exhibit is supposed to make visitors feel an inexplicable sense of dread, you know. Is this directly relevant to Project Blue Book? No. Is this stuff that they're not going to tell you about on the official tour? Yes. Some folks report that the ghosts actually show up for work. Like they'll walk in, open a door, hang out. Like, excuse me, where is this in the news? Now there's a helicopter that was used for classified missions back in the day. Sits in a museum, still filled with holes from things I can't say, and you can actually hear like the voices from the troops like here, you know, carried around. There is a young boy that, you know, hangs around, let's say something that dropped the Fat Man on Japan, if you know what I know. And supposedly he just comes out at night, hangs out, has fun. The Hop Along, which is another, you know, military craft. Sometimes you see the pilot in the seat of it, just sitting there flipping switches, trying to get home. Oh, and the seat is still stained with redness. Now there are some malevolent spirits, and they're not all super duper friendly. I can't say the name of what houses the malevolent spirits, but you get some rattles, some clanks, some shadowy figures, strange lights, all sorts of ghosties. And this is where Project Blue Book is based out of? I don't know, man, I'm seeing a lot of weird stuff here. Number 3, the 1964 New Mexico case. So picture this. Socorro, New Mexico, April 24th of 1964, 5:45 p.m. to be exact. Sergeant Lonnie Zamora, you know, police officer, is in pursuit of a speeding car when unexpectedly he hears a roar and witnesses a flame in the southwestern sky. Now, after that he encounters a shiny object described as like aluminum, shaped like the letter O, about 150 to 200 yards away. But just wait, it gets more intriguing. He spots 2 figures in white overalls beside the object, seemingly normal but perhaps smaller adults or larger young people. And hey, if this isn't enough to stir the good old imagination, there's a blue and orange flame beneath the object, and in the blink of an eye, it rises and zips away. Now here's where the story takes a twist. Project Blue Book, you know, the thing we're talking about today, tagged this case is unknown. Zamora's account becomes a puzzle, attracting both, you know, UFO enthusiasts and skeptics alike. You get a lot of theories, a lot of possible explanations. We get like the mundane, the fantastical, who knows what. Could it be a mirage of the star Canopus, as, you know, one UFO skeptic, I believe his name was Stuart Campbell, suggested? Or was it the testing of a lunar landing device by the White Sands Missile Range? Or was it just a prank by, you know, local tech students? Now the president of New Mexico Tech at the time, Sterling Colgate, was leaning towards a student prank, describing this object as a candle in a balloon, you know, not sophisticated. And yes, we have some more skeptics that want to give their 2 cents. Philip J. Klass, you know, he labeled the incident a hoax, a ploy to boost tourism. Some folks even thought that, you know, Zamora might have been a victim rather than an active participant in an alleged hoax. So fast forward to 1966, we get Paul Ridings, president of, you know, the Chamber of Commerce, looking for a tourist attraction opportunity. So we put in some stone walkways, steps, and benches all around the supposed landing site, but still a quarter mile away because apparently there's radioactive contamination rumors. Now Zamora didn't like the relentless attention. Retreats from everything, opts for, you know, peace and quiet, manages a gas station. And this incident just kinda is still happening. We don't know what it was. And according to the experts, Project Blue Book labeled this entire event as unexplained. To this day, we don't know what happened. Like, after all these years, we got nothing. Number 2, the 1965 Kbur Landing. So this incident happened on December 9th of, yes, 1965 in the small town of Kbur, Pennsylvania, and it's one of those UFO sightings that kind of evokes curiosity in the mind, if you will. So picture this. A large, brilliant fireball streaking across the skies, witnessed not just only in Kbur, but also, you know, 6 different states, and also in Canada, over Detroit and Windsor respectively. Now, initial explanations rolled in from the experts. So astronomers reasoned it was likely a meteor bolide, gracefully running up in the atmosphere, descending at a steep angle. NASA, ever the voice of reason, chimed in 2005, many years later, suggesting that metallic fragments found in the area were remnants of a Soviet satellite. However, a twist in the tale's recording of this finding mysteriously vanished in 1987, which kind of adds a layer of intrigue to the whole thing. The incident found its place in pop culture and UFOlogy, earning the moniker Pennsylvania's Roswell. But like, what happened there? You know, we get like reports of a large fireball over Michigan and Ohio, grass fires, sonic booms in Pittsburgh, all sorts of stuff. We got specifically wisps of blue smoke, vibrations, and an ominous thump. Something from the sky crashed in the woods. Now the plot thickens when state troopers and the Air Force personnel combed through the forest, but found, in their own words, absolutely nothing. So the initial media coverage had headlines like, you know, searchers failed to find object, which added to the enigma. So we've got some experts weighing in. Astronomers, geophysicists, Department of Defense spokespeople, they all had their say. Let's see, we've got astronomer Paul Lanier, who suggested a meteor, while the Department of Defense leaned towards the fireball just being a natural phenomenon. Science journals dabbled in the discussion too, with Sky and Telescope reporting shockwaves on a seismograph as the fireball passed through the atmosphere. So once again, we're gonna fast forward back to 2005, when, you know, NASA was like, oh hey, we have a suggestion. They claimed that it was, you know, satellite fragments. But, we've got investigative reporter Leslie Keene, who, you know, took NASA to court for those mysteriously vanishing records. The legal tussle revealed 2 boxes that were just, you know, of paper that just went missing from this incident, which once again, given the government some side-eye. Oh, but here's the kicker. We've got some recent speculations proposing that the object might have been a General Electric Mark II re-entry vehicle, which is a spy satellite launched by the Air Force. But, you know, we don't have confirmation from NASA or the Air Force. So, and oh, one more thing. So we all remember the show Unsolved Mysteries? So back in 1990, they kind of hinted at it was a UFO crash, with eyewitness accounts describing an object shaped like an acorn adorned with hieroglyph-like writing being carted out of the forest. Number 1. J. Allen Hein. So initially a skeptic of flying saucers, Hein came to believe over the course of the top-secret project that serious investigation of UFOs was a legitimate scientific endeavor. So he acted as scientific advisor to UFO studies undertaken by the US Air Force under 3 projects: Project Sign, Project Grudge, and Project Blue Book. He studied UFO reports and decided whether the phenomena described therein, you know, suggested known astronomical objects. When Project Sign hired Hein, he was skeptical of UFO reports. He suspected they were made by unreliable witnesses, or by the persons who had misidentified man-made or natural objects. Like in 1948, he said, like, the whole subject seemed utterly ridiculous, and described it as a fad that would soon pass. Now in 1953, Hein was an associate member of the Robertson panel, which concluded that there was nothing anomalous about UFOs, and that a public relations campaign should be undertaken to debunk the subject and reduce public interest. He would later lament, though, that the Robertson panel, in later years he would actually retract that and say that that panel helped make UFOs a disreputable field of study. So by the time Project Blue Book was shuttered in 1969, Hein was one of the few people involved who conceded that some UFO cases could simply defy explanation. Today he's known as the father of UFOlogy, you know, who coined the phrase close encounter. In a 1985 interview, when asked what caused his change of opinion, he responded, 2 things really. One was the completely negative and unyielding attitude of the Air Force. They wouldn't give UFOs a chance of existing, even if they were flying up and down the street in broad daylight. Everything had to have an explanation. I began to resent that, even though I basically felt the same way, because I still thought they weren't going about it in the right way. You can't assume that everything is, you know, black no matter what. Secondly, the caliber of the witnesses began to trouble me. Quite a few instances were reported by military pilots, for example, and I knew them to be fairly well trained. So this is when I first began to think that, well, maybe there was something to all this. Number 5. Camp Wilson. So we find ourselves in a truly remarkable moment as a new wave of UFO sightings takes center stage this year, and NASA can no longer afford to turn a blind eye to this unexplained phenomenon. Together, let's travel to the California desert, where an event unfolded that eerily echoes the famous 1997 Phoenix Lights incident. Now, if you're a fan of a channel, you've heard me talk about this before. If not, I've done plenty of other videos on it. Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, known for their groundbreaking investigations, brought to light footage from April of 2021, filmed over 29 palms. This sighting is far from your typical blurry UFO footage. The object, described as a giant black triangular shape with lights on its edges, was captured from multiple angles by 6 videos, with the accompanying high-exposure photograph revealing even more detail. Witnesses, including over 50 US Marines, were baffled baffled by the object's sudden appearance, size, and behavior. Like I said before, the incident closely resembles the Phoenix Lights, where a massive triangular UFO was witnessed by thousands. It's important to note that the witnesses in this case aren't your average civilians. They are trained military personnel, artillerymen, and mortarmen who have dealt with illumination rounds in various military aircraft. And their unanimous conclusion? This was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Specifically speaking, a mortarman serving at Camp Wilson during this incident spoke with Corbell and took a high-exposure photo on his smartphone, which revealed the outline of, this object. It appears to be triangular, surrounded by lights spaced evenly around its edge in a V formation. Now, the mortarman, who was staying anonymous for safety reasons, described how one of his companions witnessed the object materialize from nowhere, saying, "One of my buddies was outside. He was looking at the sky and said it just kind of appeared out of nowhere. And we all came out and looked, and then slowly like 50 plus people started coming out looking. Those lights appeared out of nowhere." Hey, he said it twice. He was adamant. He added that despite their military experience, none of the Marines could recognize the craft, and described their reaction as, you guessed it, baffled. Now, this man who filmed and photographed the object said, "If you look at the picture, you can see a black triangular shape. But the picture I took with the black triangular shape underneath the lights, it's definitely not any type of flare thing or illumination rounds." The witness said the apparent object remained stationary for approximately 10 minutes. But also, like, a Marine can be overheard on one of the videos saying that the triangle might have been in motion. Another Marine who saw it was serving as an artilleryman at the base when he saw the UFO. He firmly rejected any suggestions that the lights could be attributed to illumination rounds that could have been, sent off by artillery or any other mundane explanation he might have recognized, saying this was something none of us had ever seen before. It was a completely different color. The size and the illumination was different. He explained that when they fire off illumination rounds, it's one. You send it in the air and let it drop, and then you send off another one. This was like 5 next to each other, and they're kind of reddish, and our usual illumination rounds are a yellow-white color. The UFO's disappearance, just as illumination rounds were fired over it, adds a layer of mystery. Helicopters and a massive military convoy swiftly converged on the scene, leaving us to ponder what exactly was the government's involvement in all this. The parallels between this and Phoenix Lights are undeniable. Both incidents feature large triangular objects with lights hovering over military facilities and then inexplicably vanishing. It's a real head-scratcher, and as more details emerge, it's clear that NASA and other space agencies will need to address the growing body of evidence related to these unidentified aerial phenomena, which is something I've been saying for, how many months have I been here again? Number 4, the Go Fast video. So this video, uploaded by the UFO investigative group To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences in March of 2018, was secured by a Freedom of Information Act request to the US government. The video was taken in 2015 off of the East Coast by an FA-18F fighter jet using the aircraft's onboard Raytheon AN/ASQ-228 Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared Pod, also known as ATF-LIR. I know myself too well, I'm gonna trip over my tongue if I try saying that more than once, so it should be called ATF for short. ATF is designed to allow pilots to track, target, and destroy targets on the ground at ranges of up to 40 miles. Now, it should be noted that ATF is good at spotting, but not engaging aerial targets. The video, nicknamed Go Fast by To the Stars, starts by explaining the various numbers and symbols that appear in the footage. Things like the aircraft's altitude, which was around 25,000 feet, and the fact that the ATF was pointed ahead and to the left of the Super Hornet. The readout also explains that the aircraft was traveling at 252 knots and in a 5-degree turn, and the unknown object is approximately 4.4 nautical miles away. The video shows the Super Hornet's weapons system operator repeatedly trying to acquire the UFO with the ATF's built-in auto tracker, which can, pick out an object and keep it centered on camera. After 2 tries, the weapons system officer, or WSO, shouts, "Whoa, got it," to which another person, assumed to be the pilot, says, "Woohoo, whoa," not to sound like Mario or anything. "What the bleep is that thing?" the pilot asks. The WSO later says, "Oh my gosh, dude," to which the pilot replies, "Whoa. What is that, man?" Now yes, this is where skeptics might start asking, but Alexa, how is this unknown object different from weird government aircrafts we don't know about? Well, doubters, let me count thy ways. For starters, the UFO does not have any kind of hot exhaust trail that would be emitted by a conventional turbine engine, appearing to emit no heat on the ATF sensor. And secondly, the UFO doesn't have any visible wings or fins. Through my research, I've learned that even cruise missiles, such as the American Tomahawk or Russian Kbur, have small winglets that should be visible, and other missiles such as the Maverick anti-tank missile have stubby fins. The UFO appears oval-like and does not appear to fly nose first in the direction of travel. So once again, this was a video hidden and released by the government, so NASA, any comment? Number 3, Las Vegas aliens. Want to go gambling? One sighting this year in Las Vegas shows shadowy figures lurking somewhere in the shot. You can watch the creepy footage, and see if you can spot them. This video is one of many supposed UFO sightings in Vegas just this year, with another sighting around the incident even involving police officer. But this particular video shows a group of people looking kind of nervous as they look into a backyard behind a house, with the camera zooming in on a forklift truck which has shadowy figures looking inside. Now, there was a fair bit of confusion over where the extraterrestrials are in the video, but many people insist they're there, including me. For example, one comment wrote, "You can see their face, eyes glowing in the first tractor. Then look at the second one, you can see it peeking. They're on like 8 to 10 feet tall." Another wrote, "Face a little left of the center of the circle, you can see the eyes in the mouth." So this video could offer fresh insight into the plethora of encounters and sightings that Vegas has recently seen. Police body cam footage emerged in June showing lights hovering in the sky before plummeting to the ground in a suspected UFO crash landing sighting. Officers carried out an extensive search following reports of the mysterious figures, with no new evidence being uncovered. However, an eyewitness to the suspected crash landing spoke out and claimed they witnessed the whole thing, and even stumbled across an extraterrestrial. "Apparently my brother told me to look behind the forklift, and I did. I saw the alien creature. So when I saw it, it was a tall, skinny, lengthy creature," according to this YouTuber. "He was a gray-greenish color, and when I looked it in the eyes, my whole body just froze. Bear in mind, I'm looking at his whole body. He has weird-looking feet and a big face and eyes." Yes, there could be numerous theories about the existence of alien life. Many people believe that the universe is simply too big for us to be alone, no matter how unlikely life is to develop. I'm with that. One theory about why we haven't encountered aliens is that we are being snubbed by the galactic community, either because we're too stupid or too nasty, which fair. Another interesting idea is that intelligent life has evolved several times in the universe. However, the lifespan of an intelligent civilization compared to the universe as a whole is so relatively short that intelligent civilizations might never have coexisted, as one goes extinct before another emerges. Let me know in the comments what your theories are. Number 2. CBP footage. US Customs and Border Protection, so CBP for short, quietly released a slew of records and videos of UFOs in August of this year. Specifically, 12 videos, which were released in response to a Freedom of Information Act request, all of which allegedly contained footage of UFOs. Now all the footage is available for download and is accompanied by a UFO report titled "The Pentagon's UAP Task Force, Midi Security and Police Studies No. 183. The report is an older document said to be written by Frank Milburn and had something to do with the Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies at the Bar Ilan University. It's unclear precisely what the report has to do with the videos, which are pretty stunning on their own. One of the videos clearly shows an orb flying in close proximity to a plane, to the point where it appears the orb is chasing the plane through the sky. It's clear the object isn't moving like any other craft known to man. Most of the footage appears to show some type of orb following an aircraft or flying over land, and in one particular video, we can see one of these super fast objects glide over what appears to be some type of urban development or military base. So what are these orbs? We have no idea. They've shown up consistently around army installations and seem particularly fascinated with military activity. But other than that, we're still none the wiser as to what the heck is going on in our skies. The videos, some of which leaked already a few years back, have added fuel to the already raging fire of public discourse around flying saucers. One video in particular from 2013 shows an unidentifiable spot flying over an airport. The video is black and white and the footage is a little grainy, and the object, whatever it is, cruises over the airport at what appears to be a consistent rate, on a path taking it towards the ocean. It doesn't look at all that unusual. Like if you had already told me it was a bird or a small, UAP, I'd believe it. But the trouble starts when it gets near the water and appears to change shape. Shortly thereafter, the object seems to disappear, reappear, and then vanish for good. Some folks have interpreted that as the object having dipped beneath the water and emerged again, seemingly without losing any speed, which would be an impressive engineering achievement. But the video is so poor, it could just as easily be a digital artifact. Look, we've filled the space around us with a growing number of cameras and orbiting satellites, and they're recording all the time. More than that, we as humans are creating more technology, some of which isn't public knowledge. It was probably inevitable that we would start to catch things on camera that we can't explain. But there's a pretty big gap between, look at that weird thing, and I bet it came from across the stars. Still, there's some weird stuff going on in the sky, and hey NASA, we should probably devote some resources to figuring out what it is. With that in mind though, apparently Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Mike Rounds introduced an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, which would establish a structure for how and when UAP documents would be released to the public. So for example, for decades, many Americans have been fascinated by, what the heck's out there, and it's long past time they got some answers. The Americans, Canadians, everybody has a right to learn about technologies of unknown origins, non-human intelligence, and unexplainable phenomena. So apparently we're not only working to declassify what the government has previously learned about these, phenomena, but also to create a pipeline for future research to be made public. The bill requires that the government agencies turn over any UAP information they possess within 300 days of the act going into effect. All of which is to say we're at least like a year and a half out from seeing the extraterrestrial goods, so I'm gonna keep screaming at NASA if you don't mind. Number 1. Georgeaga Footage. So over the last year, if you couldn't tell by today, unexplainable objects have been appearing in the sky, baffling a lot of folks, especially pilots. So some pilots believe that these fast orbiting objects aren't satellites or known military aircraft. Specifically, pilot Georgeaga remembers the event of what he claims was the most frightening experience of his life, where a circular object flew directly in front of his plane and whizzed directly by his window. He and his co-pilot Daniel were flying towards Medellin when they noticed the strange object. Now thankfully our pilot was able to turn his plane around and the unidentified object moved towards them. He also caught the first video of the stationary object. He he was able to fly past the object. And he doesn't think it was a balloon because ideally, the wind from the plane should have blown it away. The pilot believes that whatever he saw was, once again, not a balloon by any measure, as he was way too high up and it was way too cold for a balloon to float free. Soon after he posted the video on Twitter, it was uploaded by an Instagram handle named The Hood's Finest, and the video went viral and viewers speculated that what he saw was definitely a UFO. The pilot claims the aircraft was traveling at a speed of 300 kilometers an hour, with temperatures falling close to around 5. And in those conditions, mistaking a balloon or a bird for a UFO is very unlikely. Once again, hey NASA, wanna weigh in? Starting off, we have the original Roswell sighting. One simply cannot discuss aliens, UFOs, or anything supernatural without mentioning that fateful summer of 1947. Rancher W.W. Mac Brazel had found wreckage on his property in Lincoln County, New Mexico, roughly 120 kilometers north of Roswell, sometime between mid-June and early July, describing it as rubber strips, tinfoil, and thick paper. The ranch had no phone and no radio, leaving Mac completely unaware of the ongoing flying saucer craze, so he gathered the debris and just pushed it under some brush to dispose of it. This was not the first instance of a flying disc spotting in the region, with several stories already being reported to the press that year. On July 5th, Mac drove into Corona, where he heard stories of silvery flying discs, and 2 days later, on July 7th, made the decision to bring the wreckage into the sheriff's office in Roswell. The sheriff called in the Roswell Army Airfield, which assigned the matter to Major Jesse Marcel. Mac brought Major Marcel back to the debris site, and the two gathered up more pieces of rubber and tinfoil, with the Major taking the materials home. On July 8th, Public Information Officer for the Roswell Army, Walter Hott, issued a press release stating that personnel from the field's 509th Operations Group had recovered a flying disc near Roswell. On that same day, Major Marcel took the material to his base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, who reported the findings to General Roger Ramey at Fort Worth Army Airfield. FWAF for short. General Ramey ordered that the material be flown to Fort Worth immediately, leaving Marcel to board a B-29 Superfortress to make the flight. As soon as Marcel brought the material to General Ramey's office, both Ramey and his chief of staff, Colonel Thomas Dubose, identified the material as pieces of a weather balloon kite. The weather officer on duty explained to reporters that ray wind devices were used at around 80 weather stations across the country. The balloons were attached to a 6-pointed reflective device that looked like a silver star. After launch, the balloon would expand with increasing altitude before bursting at around 60,000 feet, with pieces dispersing in their fall to the ground. Now, after the initial newspaper reports of 1947, the Roswell incident faded from public attention for more than 30 years, until the late 1970s, which brings us to February of 1978, when UFO researcher Stanton Friedman interviewed Major Marcel, whose statements contradicted those he made to the press in 1947, saying they wanted some comments from him, but he wasn't at liberty to do that. All he could do was keep his mouth shut. And General Ramey is the one who told the newspapers, the newsman, what it was and to forget about it. It's nothing more than a weather observation balloon. Of course, they both knew differently. Now, while he didn't elaborate on that statement, and I wish he did deny the popular theories at the time of any bodies being found near the debris. After the United States congressional inquiries, the General Accounting Office launched an inquiry and directed the Office of United States Secretary of the Air Force to conduct an internal investigation. A report released in 1994 concluded that the material recovered in 1947 was likely, keyword here, debris from Project Mogul, a military surveillance program employing high-altitude balloons in classified portions of an unclassified New York University project by atmospheric researchers. A scholarly consensus emerged concluding that the military had decided to conceal the true purpose of the crash device, allegedly nuclear test monitoring, and instead inform the public that the crash was of a weather balloon. The balloon had allegedly been launched from Alamogordo, Army Airfield a month earlier, carrying a radar reflector and classified Project Mogul sensors for experimental monitoring of Soviet nuclear testing. The Air Force reports were dismissed by UFO experts as being either disinformation or simply implausible. Yeah. Now, the scary part about all of this for me is counting how many times the government has changed its tale, expecting the general public to believe them each time. Which story do you believe? In fourth place, we have an anonymous report from 2013 from Athens, Texas. A retired military firefighter and commercial pilot, who was also a former astronaut, submitted his account of what happened around 10:15 p.m. on the evening of July 5, 2013, to the National UFO Reporting Center, also known as NUFORC. He reported that he and his family were sitting outside, and when he looked up into the sky, he observed a fairly large orange glowing orb moving rapidly overhead at around 90 degrees of elevation. A minute or two later, his whole family spotted a group of 3 similar objects along the same flight path as the first one. The objects allegedly gave off no sound and seemed to glow from atmospheric heating. He and his family attempted to record the objects using their iPhones, although the grainy dark video was of no evidential use. A direct quote from him reads, "They moved much faster than orbital satellites, like the International Space Station or airplanes, but much slower than meteors, and did not change brightness as a meteor would upon entering the atmosphere." So, if a former astronaut and pilot has no explanation for what he witnessed, what the heck was it? In the middle of our list today, we're discussing a San Antonio spotting of 7 donuts in the sky. On May 19th of 1952, an air crew flying an RB-36 reconnaissance aircraft reported spotting a series of, you guessed it, several donut shapes appearing in the sky, and were able to take photographs to accompany their incident report, which can be found in National Archives. The crew of 22 reported flying just north of Sonora when they originally spotted the phenomenon, stating that the plane was headed on a 301-degree heading at 18,000 feet, with relatively calm winds for that altitude. At 8:05 p.m., the objects appeared just to the left of the bomber's nose, at a range estimated by the crew to be around 80 to 120 kilometers ahead. The objects were stacked vertically from approximately 25,000 feet to 60,000 feet. And even with all the photographs and drawings, there is still no definite answer as to what was spotted. In second place, we have the Washington Flap. At 11:40 p.m. on Saturday, July 19th of 1952, Edward Nugent, an air traffic controller at the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, try saying that 5 times fast, spotted 7 objects on his radar. The objects were around 24 kilometers south-southwest of the city, not following any established flight paths, and no known aircrafts were in that area. Edward's superior, Harry Barnes, a senior air traffic controller at that airport, watched the objects on the radarscope, later writing that they knew immediately that a very strange situation existed. Their movements were completely radical compared to those of any ordinary aircraft they knew of. Harry had 2 controllers check Edward's radar, and they found it was working pretty normally. He then called the National Airport's radar-equipped control tower, and the controllers there said that they had unidentified blips on their radar screen, and that a hovering bright light in the sky was moving at speeds they couldn't understand. Now at this point, other objects appeared in all sectors of the radar scope, and when they moved over the White House and the United States Capitol, Harry then called the Andrews Air Force Base, which was located around 10 miles away. Although they reported that they had no unusual objects on their radar, an airman soon called the base's control tower to report the sighting of a strange object. Airman William Brady, who was in the tower, saw an object that appeared to be an orange ball of fire, trailing a tail, saying it was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Now, where have I said that? Oh yeah. As William tried to alert the other personnel in the tower, the strange object took off at an unbelievable speed. On one of National Airport's runways, pilot S.C. Pierman was waiting in the cockpit of his plane for permission to take off. After spotting what he believed to be a meteor, he was told that the control tower's radar had detected unknown objects closing in on his position. Pierman observed 6 objects that he described as white, tailless, fast-moving lights over a 14-minute period. He was in radio contact with Harry during his sighting, and Harry later reported that each sighting coincided with a pip that could be seen near his plane. When he reported that the light streaked off at a high speed, it disappeared on their scope. Now meanwhile, back at the Andrews Air Force Base, Staff Sergeant Charles Davenport observed an orange-red light to the south, where the light would appear to stand still, then make an abrupt change in direction and altitude, with the phenomena happening over several times. At one point, both radar centers at National Airport and the radar at Andrews Air Force Base were tracking an object hovering over a radio beacon. The object vanished in all 3 radar centers at the same time. At 3 a.m., shortly before 2 United States Air Force F-94 Starfire jet fighters, I'm really ancient on my airplanes today, from Newcastle Air Force Base in Delaware arrived over Washington. All of the objects vanished from the radar at National Airport. However, when the jets ran low on fuel and left, the objects returned, which convinced Harry that the UFOs were monitoring radio traffic and behaving accordingly. Now, the objects were last detected by radar at 5:30 a.m. The government later tried dismissing the events of that day on a temperature blip, but those who were present have been adamant otherwise. In first place, we have the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. Yeah, I know I said I'd be talking about UFO sightings today, but this event is a combination sighting and abduction that I couldn't leave off the list. The Hills were a married couple that lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Barney was employed by the United States Postal Service, while Betty was a social worker. They were active in the local Unitarian congregation, members of the NAACP, and Barney sat on a local board of the United States Commission on Civil Rights. Overall, they seem like pretty normal folks, right? The UFO sighting happened at around 10:30 p.m. on September 19th of 1961. The Hills were driving back to their home in Portsmouth from a vacation in Niagara Falls in Montreal. Just south of Lancaster, New Hampshire, Betty noticed a bright point of light in the sky that moved from below the moon in the planet Jupiter upwards to the west of the moon. While Barney was driving, Betty reasoned that she was observing a falling star. Only, it was moving upwards. Because it moved erratically and grew bigger and brighter, Betty convinced Barney to stop their car for a closer look, as well as to walk their dog, Dulcie. Barney obliged and stopped at a picnic area just south of Twin Mountain. Now by this point, Betty had dug out her binoculars for a closer look and described seeing an odd-shaped aircraft flashing multicolored lights travel across the face of the moon, believing it to be a flying saucer based off of stories she had heard from her sister. Now taking his turn with the binoculars, Barney thought it was just a commercial plane at first, but soon changed his mind because without looking as if it had turned, the craft rapidly descended in his direction, causing him to realize something was wrong. The Hills said they continued driving on the isolated road, moving very slowly towards Franconia Notch in order to observe the object as it came even closer. At one point, the object passed above a restaurant and signal tower on top of Cannon Mountain and came out near the Old Man of the Mountain. Betty testified that it was at least 1.5 times the length of the granite cliff profile, which was 40 feet long, and it seemed to be rotating. At one point, the object descended rapidly towards their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. The huge silent craft hovered at around 80 to 100 feet above the Hills' 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air and filled the entire field of view in the windshield. Barry stepped away from the vehicle and moved closer to the object, which he later said was roughly the size of a huge pancake. And that statement right there just made me hungry. Still using the binoculars, Barney claimed to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures peering out of the craft's windows, seeming to look right at him. In his report to investigator Walter Webb of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, NICAP, Barney described specifically that the beings were somehow not human, but humanoid. In unison, all but one figure moved to what appeared to be a panel on the rear wall of the hallway that encircled the front portion of the craft. The one remaining figure continued to look at Barney and communicated a message to him, saying, "Stay where you are and keep looking." Barney had a recollection of observing the humanoid forms wearing glossy black uniforms and black caps. Red lights on what appeared to be bat wing fins began to telescope out of the sides of the craft, and a long structure descended from the bottom of the aircraft. Now, the silent aircraft approached what Barney estimated was within 50 to 80 feet overhead and 300 feet away from him. Not arriving home until dawn, the Hills stated that they had some odd sensations and impulses they couldn't explain. Now, extremely confused, the Hills said they tried to reconstruct what had exactly happened the night before, but their memories were incomplete and fragmented. Notice I did a little bit of a jump there. That's because we don't know what happened. After sleeping for a few hours, Betty awoke and placed the shoes and clothing she had worn during the drive into her closet, observing that the dress was torn at the hem, zipper, lining, and later noted a pinkish powder on her dress. Now, over the years, 5 different laboratories have conducted chemical and forensic analyses on the dress. This wasn't the only damaged items in their possession. Barney said that the leather strap for the binoculars was torn, but didn't remember how. The toes of his best dress shoes were scraped, and their watches were broken, and no matter what, never worked again. There were shiny concentric circles, so similar to the rings that you would find on a tree trunk on their car's trunk, that had not been there the previous day. Betty and Barney experimented with a compass, noting that when they moved it close to the spots, the needle would whirl rapidly. But when they moved it a few inches away from the shiny spots, it would drop down. 10 days after the UFO encounter, Betty began having a series of vivid dreams, which continued for 5 successive nights. She stated that she experienced them with a degree of detail and intensity that she never had before. And after the 5th night, they stopped and never recurred, although they occupied her thoughts during the day. Determined to recover their lost memories, the Hills opted to partake in hypnosis sessions. Barney recalled driving the car away from the UFO, but afterwards he felt compelled to pull off the road and drive into the woods, eventually spotting 6 men standing on the dirt road. The car stalled, and 3 of the men approached the car, telling Barney not to fear them. He was still anxious, however, and he reported that their leader told him to close his eyes. While hypnotized, Barney said, "I felt like the eyes had pushed into my eyes," a statement he would repeat each session. The best anyone has been able to rebut what happened was claiming stress and sleep deprivation as the cause of what they saw and experienced. I'll admit, I'm usually much more of a skeptic, but This seems pretty dang real to me.
Number 5, Las Vegas. I think anybody watching these videos are pretty curious about UFOs, and we'd all want to see a UFO up close and personal, yeah? Well, what if you had one crash in your backyard? For this Las Vegas family, they might have had a close encounter right on their doorstep. No contact UFO, curbside delivery. A 911 call about non-human beings caught the attention of local police when on April 30th around midnight, a police officer's body cam recorded something streaking across the sky. This event was corroborated across California, Nevada, and Utah, according to the American Meteor Society, who probably answers the phone a lot about possible UFOs. And whatever it was that landed in this family's backyard, drone video showed a circular imprint in the dirt. When the family called, they claimed that there was an 8-foot person outside the craft and another inside it, with big eyes and looking at them. The caller described them as being 8 to 10 feet tall, looking like aliens with big eyes and a big mouth. Described them as being shiny and 100% not human. Now, this wasn't just one random crazy caller, as the whole family living there said they saw the same thing. The caller said that they saw a shooting star and now there's something in the backyard. The officer responding said he saw something fall out of the sky too, which is why he was so curious about it. Representatives from Nellis Air Force Base said they weren't involved with this incident at all and suggested contacting the police. Interestingly though, a spokesperson for the Pentagon didn't comment at all in regards to this event. Now, isn't that interesting? And if you're looking for way more footage about UFOs, well, hey, you already know Top 5 Scary is the place to be and then some. We got more UFOs than you could ever watch in a lifetime. So click subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell so you don't miss any of our scary videos from us, but do that at the end of this video, okay? Because I got 4 more pieces of UFO footage and evidence coming up for you right now. Number 4, Indonesia. Now here is an absolutely wild story for you. A Marine veteran is breaking a 14-year silence, claiming now that he and his squad mates saw a UFO while they were deployed in Indonesia in 2009 and were threatened into silence over it. Michael Herrera was a 20-year-old rifleman sent on a Navy humanitarian mission during the 2009 Sumatra earthquake and the tsunami that would devastate the region. He claims that his unit was guarding a supply drop outside the city of Padang, and his 6-man unit stumbled on something they were never meant to see: an octagonal, unknown aerial craft that seemed to be being used by some sort of clandestine government force. The Marine has an unmarked 4-year service record and showed text with a fellow witness who refused to speak out about this incident, worrying that discussing this incident would jeopardize his life. Herrera claimed that while guarding supplies from insurgents, they had weapons drawn on them by unmarked forces who had American accents, who told them off and demanded to know who they were. These unknown soldiers took the weapons from the Marines and took their IDs and began loading ammunition, large weapon cases, and other things from modified Ford F-350s onto a platform beneath a large octagonal craft, which would rise off the ground and shoot away at an incredible speed of up to 4,000 miles per hour. Now, for 14 years, Herrera did not say a word on this incident. It wasn't until the recent wave of UFO sightings and discussions that he felt like it was finally time to come forward about this event. Now, it doesn't really sound like a Marine to lie about something like this, especially not one with an unmarked 4-year service record like that. So what happened? Who were those guys? Officially sanctioned by the US government? Some sort of other organization entirely? The Men in Black? Is it fun to wildly speculate? It is. Number 3, David Grush. David Grush is a former intelligence officer, a US Air Force veteran who has got ties to UAP and UFO development and research, and you're probably going to be hearing this name a lot if you're interested in UFOs and all that stuff, because he's been blowing the whistle on possible UFO activity inside the US, boldly claiming that not only does the American government have proof of extraterrestrial life, but that the American government is storing alien crafts for their own purpose, which kind of makes sense of that last story if you think about it. They might be connected. Now, last week, Grush made headlines when he claimed that the US government has concealed evidence of a non-human craft from Congress, and Grush is trying to make people aware of this story. He claims that it's got an intact or partially intact craft, as well as he's got evidence of deceased agents and officers through crash site retrieval, explaining when you recover something that's landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots, and believe it or not, it's true. quote. Does that mean that they have evidence of alien bodies? Deceased aliens? Now, Grush claims that personally, he never saw any non-human evidence up close and personal, but he knows enough people within the program to confide that it's real, saying he knows several intelligence officers involved in the crash site retrieval program, as well adding that there's a decades-long competition with adversaries to retrieve the materials from crash sites to reverse engineer the crafts for defense advantages. Isn't that so like humans? We got alien technology and the only thing we can do with it is build more warships. Can't do anything fun with it? Anyway, it's an incredible claim, and if this is true, it would be the story of the century, maybe the biggest story in human history, this moment of truth that everyone is looking for and fighting for, this final proof that aliens are totally out there among us and we're working on their crafts. So is it true? Is the truth finally coming out? All we can do is sit on our thumbs and wait and see. Number 2, strange orb. I think this has been kind of a heavy video so far. You know, we've got these big claims of whistleblowers, leaks to the press, shadowy organizations, black ops mercenaries, people being silenced, retrieved crashes. We need at least one footage of something strange, a little black dot going across the sky to just lighten up the mood a little bit, you know? Plus, I really think footage of weird orbs is kind of the bread, butter, the roots of this channel, and I don't want to stray too far from my roots. This following footage that we're about to show you was captured sometime in June 2021 and remained dormant for years, until being posted on the UFO subreddit, which is the most trusted source of UFO information in the human world, I think. When full disclosure happens, it's gonna happen on Reddit before anywhere else. Now, this clip shows a small black spherical orb darting around the sky at that impossible to ascertain distance where you can't make out any features or anything. The object moves erratically. It doesn't seem like it's moving with the wind or being blown, but rather jerked around, like stopping completely and then going in the opposite direction, giving the impression that it's something that's being controlled. Now, whether that means it's being controlled remotely or it's being piloted by something very, very small, I'm not sure, but it's something that's being driven. That much I think. Drones are obviously the most likely possibility, although I would say the object in this clip seems like it's moving just a little bit too fast to be a drone from this planet. We see a lot of these mysterious spheroid objects in UFO clips, and I have to wonder if they're all coming from the same source. Somebody check the manufacturer's logo on it. Now, it bears mentioning with any clip of a weird thing in the sky, very likely could just be a balloon, could also be some sort of camera glitch or artifact, and without any of the context or important key details in this video, like where it came from, who filmed it, and why, it can be hard to tell for certain just what this is. Not much to go on but speculating. So I'll leave it up to you in the comments section. You let me know if you think this is just circumstantial and distracting us from the truth, or if this is another piece of the puzzle. And number 1, recovered crafts. Of course, David Grush isn't the only person claiming the US government has impressive UFO technology hidden away. An unnamed, anonymous whistleblower, probably for the best, claims that a UFO recovered by the US military is so advanced that its technology doesn't even make sense to humans at all, claiming that this craft distorts space-time, claiming that on the inside, it's the size of a football stadium. This story was relayed from the whistleblower to lawyer Daniel Sheehan, who's a lawyer who specializes in aiding UFO whistleblowers. There really is a guy for everything, isn't there? The story goes that the US recovered a craft that was 30 feet wide and embedded in the earth. The crash site recovery crew sent an agent inside the downed craft and discovered, like the TARDIS, it's much bigger on the inside, saying that he was disoriented and nauseous after stepping inside and discovering that the innards of the craft were impossibly large, the size of a football stadium, while the outside was only about 30 feet wide. Now, apparently size isn't the only thing affected by the wondrous craft, with the whistleblower claiming that the agent said he was inside the UFO for a few minutes, while the rest of the unit outside claimed that he was inside for hours. Now, a story this bold would require a great weight of evidence to go with it. And that's the kicker, because unfortunately we don't have much of anything at all outside of an anonymous unnamed source possibly relating this to a lawyer. There's no dates, no location given, and definitely no photos or footage. So can we rack this up? Is this a believable source, or is this someone trying to jump on the coattails of other whistleblowers and try to drum up a bit of attention? Are all of these stories coming out right now proof that full disclosure is coming up on us, or is this just a carrot on a stick to keep us chasing forever and ever? I'm not sure. but I know the truth is out there, my ghouls and goblins.
Number 5, Italian Observatory. So back in 2007, astronomer Alberto Mayer, living in Busto Aresizio, I think I got that right, over in Italy, made an incredible discovery, almost completely by accident, which, hey, that's how most scientific progress gets made. Or maybe just me. He was adjusting the focus of his telescope when he spotted and tracked a UFO as it flew across the surface of the moon. Now the video shows the portions of the moon that he was focused on in close-up mode, while tracking a solid black object as it flew over the surface. Now sure, I could just describe what is going on in this video, but I could also let you see it and decide for yourselves, which makes a lot more sense in my brain. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, so here's roughly, here are the 24,000 words worth of content if my math makes sense, which is about a 50-50 chance. Take a look. Pretty weird, eh? So the round black object is tracked as he catches, it just after it passes the Wallace crater. And today this is how I'm learning parts of the moon were named. It hovers and hesitates before making a sudden change of path at an exact 45-degree angle. The precision and control is what gives people pause, since it seems to move as if it's being controlled, and with such mechanical dominance that it seems like it has to be something being intentionally driven, not just a strange rock floating throughout the stars. Commenters on the video pointed out that the object doesn't decrease in size at all, suggesting that the object isn't that close to the moon, and rules out the theory that this is a shadow on the surface of the moon from a large object. Now look, I'm one girl. I'm only capable of so much. The science stuff, kind of outside of my range of expertise, but I can confirm and offer my, speculation on UFO videos. And this is something. To quote one of my favorite phrases at the moment, I suppose, to be determined. Number 4, the footage the Pentagon refuses to release from Alaska. So between February 4th to the 12th, earlier this year, 4 different unidentified objects were forcibly taken down from the skies over Alaska, South Carolina, the Yukon, and the Great Lakes. While cockpit audio from F-16 pilots who, took down the UFO over Lake Huron was released, a spokesman for the Pentagon has confirmed that footage will not be released in the near future, being quoted directly as saying, "I can tell you that there is not currently any images or video footage that we can release. The imagery remains classified and I have not received any information as to the potential timeline on a change in classification." So usual government speak. This refusal is a drastic difference in comparison to the quick release of an Air Force photo of what was believed to be a Chinese spy balloon that was brought down at the same time over on the East Coast, and footage from where a Russian plane appeared to intentionally collide with a drone last March. Noted UFO researcher John Greenwald requested the footage and photos of the UFO, takedowns be released via a Freedom of Information Act, with the Pentagon claiming national security exemptions to deny this request. Because, that's not scary at all. An Air Force official said that the images would reveal cryptology and national security concerns if released. And even the, Canadian RCMP are playing coy, having ended their public search for the remains. Now look, I don't know about you folks at home, but that sounds pretty dang suspicious to me, and I think I know what I'm talking about at this point. So does anybody want to take a random trip to the Yukon just to sightsee? Totally not to recover UFO debris or anything suspicious? I'll start the car. I got room for a couple of us. I drive a nice big SUV. Number 3, the Guy Hotel memo. So it's the most requested document in the FBI's archives, right after the photo of Elvis and Nixon riding with an alien. I wish I could make this stuff up, but the file has been checked out roughly 1 million times in the last 2 years alone. So as far as KG cover-ups go, this one's fairly out in the open, but that doesn't make it any less invigorating or confounding. It's a single page, an unconfirmed report that the FBI never even followed up on. The file in question? So it's a memo dated back to March of 1950, authored by one Guy Hotel, who served as the director of the FBI field office in Washington, D.C., addressed to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. I know you all know that name. So in the memo, Guy was relaying a story seen by an Air Force pilot about something bizarre they had seen in New Mexico. And this was right around the time of Roswell fever. The memo describes flying saucers, circular in shape with raised centers, approximately 50 feet in diameter. It goes on to say that inside each saucer was a flight crew, each occupied by 3 bodies of roughly human shape, but only 3 feet tall, and bandaged in a manner similar to blackout suits used by speed flyers and test pilots. The memo goes on to claim that the crafts were found because an aircraft radar had interfered with the controlling mechanisms of the saucer, and concludes by saying, "No further evaluation was ever attempted." I don't know about you, but it seems like this should be a significantly bigger deal than that. No further evaluation? Oh, that's fine. Somebody in the Air Force claims they saw a series of flying saucers piloted by tiny men in shiny spacesuits, not even 3 years after the Roswell incident, kind of took over New Mexico. But hey, it's nothing. At least I guess there's some comfort in knowing that the government has always behaved like this when it comes to investigating and reporting on possible UAP and UFO sightings. I believe it's worth mentioning that Project Blue Book was launched not even 2 years later, investigating UFO sightings in the Air Force, so once again, giving the government my usual dose of side-eye, and yo, what the heck? Number 2, Ryan Graves' report. So Ryan Graves is a studied Air Force pilot, an FA-18 Super Hornet pilot specifically, who has flown the skies for 10 years, and has seen countless UFOs in his time flying for the Navy, seen a lot of things he can't explain. He has recently spoke out saying these things would be out there all day. Keeping an aircraft in the air requires a significant amount of, the speeds that that we have observed, 12 hours in the air is about 11 hours longer than we'd expect. On one particular incident, back in late 2014, a Super Hornet pilot nearly crashed into one of these unknown objects. Some of these objects were caught on plane camera, and so, because it's me, we have some of that footage for you today. The pilot and his wingman were flying in tandem about 100 feet apart over the Atlantic East when something flew between them. Now, Lieutenant Graves said that the object looked like a sphere encasing a cube. The pilots were concerned because they were, a covert drone program, and government officials wouldn't have had them flying around fighter jets for fear of collision. It was this that had the Navy concerned that perhaps there was more to investigate with this particular encounter. But what was truly unsettling the pilots, besides the fact that there was an intense possible safety crash, was that these crafts were accelerating to hypersonic speeds, stopping and turning on a dime, which is not really something that human pilots are capable of. So what did the pilots think they were dealing with? Graves did speak out saying, we have helicopters that can hover. We have an aircraft that can fly at 30,000 feet and right at the surface. But combine all that in one vehicle of the some type with no jet engine, no exhaust plume? That's not possible. So what do we think, folks? This seems like something worth digging into, right? Suspicious? Hands up. Who's with me? I knew y'all would. Number 1, the 2004 series of spottings. So on November 14th of 2004, Lieutenant Alex Dietrich was piloting her FA-18 Super Hornet. Yep, that's a very popular plane, when she observed an oblong shape hovering over the water. It leapt into motion, skimming 500 to 1,000 feet over the waves at around 500 knots. And for those of us Canucks, that's around 925 kilometers per hour, which is faster than I can get my vehicle. I like to get it to like 120 and that's it. The fighter jet's onboard radar couldn't detect the object, but Alex's weapon systems operator in the receipt, whose name isn't public for safety reasons, witnessed it as well. Now, Alex quoted her recollection as, we were trying to call out what we were seeing to each other, and to make sure everybody else is seeing it. It's moving so erratically and so fast that our voices, our minds, and then our radio calls can't even keep up with it. Now look, the majority of credible modern-day UFO sightings can be credited to those that work in the Air Force, and it should be noted that military pilots are trained at what they call REAS, short for, reconnaissance. Every time I say it, somebody corrects me in the comments, so I'm not even going to try this time. And referring more specifically in this case to the art of recognizing aircrafts by their shapes, paint schemes, unit insignia, and more. On one of the other Super Hornets that launched was Lieutenant Commander Chad Underwood, who was able to capture the object on an infrared camera. It was about 40 feet long, round and smooth, and quickly received the nickname Tic Tac. Yep, you guessed it, this is my favorite UFO story. Now, all of the footage that the US government has confirmed as authentic and, unexplained, speak for itself, since I know we have the clip handy. And around this time, starting on November 10th to be exact, Gary Voorhees, a petty officer on the USS Princeton guided missile cruiser, had been reporting apparitions on his radar screens in the same area. Triple checking his equipment before he made his report, and being the main technician responsible for said equipment, along with having 6 years of Navy experience at the time, he described what he was seeing as impossible. In just seconds, an object had dropped to the waterline from 60,000 feet, hovered, and then zipped away at high velocity, making right-angle turns that were quoted as being confounding and defying gravity. Hey, relax, Wicked fans, I'm right here with you. The objects returned for the next week, with Voorhees quoted as saying, "I was able to see it on the horizon, during the night and during the day, and it was definitely a glowing object. Could I tell you for 100% certainty what exactly it was we were tracking? Nope." Now, footage of this event used to exist, with Gary being able to vividly describe his memories, but has since been completely scrubbed from the internet. So, hey NASA, wanna, pipe up?
Number 5, the boys' school sighting. Our first story comes to us from a teacher at a boys' school in India who took some of his young students stargazing one fateful night when they saw something unexpected flying through the sky. As he put it, "My name is Kanan. I am a teacher at a boys' school in the village of Mayapura, West Bengal. Last week, I saw something that was what you would call a UFO. It was about 8 p.m. I was sitting outside under the stars with some of the boys. I looked up and saw this very bright blue light overhead. It started from there and it was moving very fast. Then, when it came directly overhead, it seemed to slow down and then stop. It had a tail at the back that started small and became bigger, and very clearly there was a solid object in front of that. It was not at all like a star or a satellite, and it was not very high. I was already staring at it when one boy said, 'What is that, Pradhu?' And then the other boy said, 'What is that? What is that?' We all got up and were looking at it. There were 6 of us, 5 boys and me. My wife was in the kitchen cooking something, and she came out too because we were all shouting. So it was at maybe 1.5 palm trees height from the roof of our hut, which is not very high. It was less than 5 stories above us. We saw it very clearly. Most of them were concentrating on the light. I looked in the front and saw that it was a clear object. It was not a star, and it was not far away. It was right there. And it was also, like, moving around itself, but very slowly. Then it moved slowly away towards the river, where it suddenly picked up speed and disappeared. It was like somebody who slows down to look at something. It was very, very interesting, and and the boys kept asking about it. Boys ask all sorts of questions. It was an abnormal thing, and we were completely helpless just looking at it. Did this teacher and his students really witness an alien craft? Or is there some other less interstellar explanation for this strange experience? What do you think? Number 4, the factory observer. Next up, we have a tale from Brazil, where workers at a water treatment station witnessed a UFO of a truly massive scale. This is their story. The other night, I, Roberto Rabello, saw a huge UFO over the city of Cubateo, São Paulo. When I arrived at my job at the ETA water treatment station, there were 3 other fellows watching the phenomenon. It was 12:58 a.m., dawn, and I looked to the north, and there was a UFO at low altitude. One of the technicians said that it must be a short circuit in a near-energy tower. Then, we ascended the tower and realized that the thing we were seeing was not ordinary. The UFO was higher than the energy tower. It had a red light on top and 3 other red lights below, in a triangular shape. The lights did not blink. Seconds later, between the red lights, a lot of flashes. Hundreds of white flashes. Then, all disappeared suddenly. I estimated that the UFO was bigger than a soccer field. Then, suddenly, once again, the UFO appeared, just like the first time. But this time, when the flashing lights had turned off, from the UFO, another object, like a yellow ball, came out, which flew in the direction of the COSIPA, a food factory. But the big UFO itself was no longer visible. Again, suddenly for the 3rd time, the UFO appeared, and this time we were able to see a shadow behind it, something triangular. Finally, the UFO moved away in the east direction, passing over the factory. The sighting lasted 20 minutes and was seen by 4 of us technicians. Why are UFOs hovering over our water treatment plants and food factories? Is this part of their studies on our species, or are they seeking out our weak points in preparation for a sinister invasion plot? Let us hope we never have to find out. Number 3, UFO stalker. Our next story is from Germany and tells the tale of a man and a woman who were out for a drive when they looked to the sky and saw a strange craft that seemed to take strange interest in them. As the husband told it, it was dark and cloudy, no moon, no stars. When we were driving by car through the village named Fredelschla, when my wife glanced at the sky out of the side window, she saw something dark suddenly covering the sky over our car. I drove the car and watched the road, so I saw nothing at this time. 1 minute later, a big rotating object flew down the hill over the meadow and crossed the road just over our car. We only saw the lights, which were in 2 concentric circles, about 10 in the outer, 7 in the inner. The diameter was about 50 meters. There were no colored lights. All lights were white and as bright as the headlights of a car. The rotation speed was about 1.5 rotations per second, so it wasn't easy to watch a single light. The diameter of one light was about half a meter. The object flew at a height of 10 to 20 meters over the fields to a wood, turned by changing its inclination, just like an airplane or helicopter has to, in order to do a flying curve. It quickly returned back to the road to stop beside our car and fly at the same speed, 100 kilometers per hour. It lifted up, changing its inclination to me so I could see its amazing size. 2 seconds later, it flew over the car to the other side and turned with the same movement to fly over the car again. This repeated 5 or 6 times on our way. Okay, this wasn't all, but should be enough. There was no sound or noise, except the motor of the car. There was no smell. The radio was turned off. The maximum speed of the object was about 400 to 500 kilometers an hour. The observed acceleration 2 to 3 G. I know my speed, 100 kilometers an hour, know the points where the object crossed the road and the distance between these points, and I calculated the rest. It's impossible that this was a projection on the cloudy sky. When I looked out the side window, I couldn't see the sky, only the hill. Why do alien craft seem to take such a consistent interest in common drivers? No different from any others on the road. What are they hoping to learn about our species? And how close are they to figuring it out? Number 2, the Chinese air chase. Our next story comes from a Chinese air base commander whose subordinates had an aerial encounter with a UFO that evaded and toyed with them until the jet pilots got frustrated and aggressive with the extraterrestrial craft. In the words of the colonel himself, "I am Colonel Lee, commander of the air base in Changzhou, where the military flight training academy is located. One day, 4 radar stations reported the presence of an unidentified hovering over the academy. After ascertaining that the intruder was not a military or civilian flight, I ordered 6 jet fighters to take off and intercept the UFO. At least 140 people on the ground saw the object. To observers at the base, the UFO first appeared to be a small pointed star, and then grew larger and larger, perhaps as it descended to a lower altitude. Witnesses described an object with a mushroom mushroom-shaped dome on top and a flat bottom, covered with bright, constantly rotating lights. The crew of the interceptors consisted of a pilot and a radar officer. The two officers reported that the object clearly resembled descriptions they had seen in foreign science fiction films. When they got within 4,000 meters of the UFO over King County, it abruptly shot upwards, easily evading subsequent attempts to get closer. The flight crew reported that it appeared to be toying with the plane by repeatedly outdistancing it and then reappearing right over it. The pilot requested permission to fire on the UFO with the plane's automatic 20mm cannon. I denied this permission to shoot and told him to continue to pursue and observe the object. The pilot broke off pursuit at an altitude of 12,000 meters when the plane began running low on fuel. The UFO then apparently disappeared before I could order additional planes to be sent to the area. Why was this alien craft toying with the Chinese military? Was it simply a cosmic prank or an assessment of the country's combat capabilities in preparation for a potential invasion? Let us hope it doesn't come to that. Number 1. The Polish ambulance chaser. Next on our list is a story from a Polish doctor who was in an ambulance aiding a pregnant woman on her way to the hospital when the ambulance had a close encounter that came a little too close for comfort. As the doctor related the story in his statement, "I am Dr. B. Plasek. In February, a woman named Mrs. Pluta who was pregnant began to experience labor pains and the ambulance was called. She and I, plus the driver and stretcher bearer, were traveling along deserted country roads when we encountered, quite suddenly at 3:15 a.m., a huge crimson globe that came out of the sky and paced the ambulance for about 45 minutes. As we were a team of professional medical workers, our first concern was for the safety of the mother and baby, and we considered the UFO a distracting threat. For this reason, we did not get very emotional at the time. However, when we came to a level crossing, the two attendants in their hut were simply shaking with fear at the sight. We had to halt because the road was blocked by the huge crimson ball. To be more specific, this is what I believe we saw. At first, all of us in the ambulance saw the globe as a big red ball in the sky, some distance away. It looked larger than the full moon and was dark crimson in color. It immediately descended to the treetop height and hovered about 500 meters from the ambulance. 1 second, it hung in the sky at about cloud level. The next, it was seen hovering between two trees on either side of the road in the middle distance. All of us sensed the globe's ominous approach as it cruised towards us at a very low height, following the road. I was always aware that it was never exactly in the sky, but probably not very high above the ground at any time. As our ambulance approached the level crossing, so did the globe, and we each stopped there. The globe was less than a meter above the surface of the road. I got out to speak to the crossing attendants. I said, "Can you see what I see?" They said, "We've been observing it for some time." I went to the ambulance and told the others they cannot help us at all. They're trembling with fear. At that point, Mrs. Pluta's labor contractions became more frequent, and we felt it was urgent to get to the hospital immediately. Since our path was blocked, I decided to call the police. I reported that there was an obstacle in the way and asked them to come immediately. What kind of obstacle, they asked. A UFO, I replied. It was now 4:10 a.m., and all we could do was stay there and stare at the UFO. We had plenty of time to observe it in detail. Its surface displayed curved bands and stripes with a multitude of black lines traversing up and down in irregular patterns. These clear-cut markings reminded me of veins inside the human body. The ambulance driver said they looked to him like a huge net. As we watched, parts of the surface changed color. There appeared to be orange-yellow patches on the deep crimson background. Then, the globe dropped to only about 10 centimeters above the road, constantly changing colors, pulsating, but always with dull, muted tones. Suddenly, it gave off a strong white light that was so bright it reflected on the surface of the road. Out of sheer exasperation, our driver flashed his headlights at it twice. Immediately, inexplicably, it simply vanished. It was 4:15 a.m. At 6:10 a.m., Mrs. Pluta gave birth to a daughter in the hospital. A careful examination of the whole area in daylight revealed nothing. Why was this strange glowing orb showing such an interest in the ambulance? Was it simply the bright flashing lights on the ambulance roof that caught its attention? Or were they aware of the pregnant woman inside and wanted to learn more about how humans are born? We will never know for sure.
In 5th place, we have the lights above the New Jersey Turnpike. On July 14th of 2001, drivers on the New Jersey Turnpike stopped on the highway just 15 minutes after midnight, where they marveled at the sight of strange orange and yellow lights in a V formation over the Arthur Kill waterway between Staten Island, New York and Carteret, New Jersey. Carteret Police Department's Lieutenant Daniel Tarrant was one of the witnesses, as well as other metro area residents from the Throgs Neck Bridge on Long Island and Fort Lee, New Jersey, near the George Washington Bridge. Air traffic controllers initially denied that any airplanes, military jets, or space flights could have caused the mysterious lights. A national weather meteorologist could find nothing in the weather to also explain those lights. Luckily, when there's something strange in one's neighborhood, one can always call New York Strange Phenomena Investigators, or NYSPI. No Ghostbusters here. This band of inquisitive minds claim to have discovered the FAA radar report from Newark International Airport on the night in question that indicates an enormous number of airborne objects, without transponders, beginning at around 10:31 p.m. and ending at 12:51 a.m. EST. At least 15 people contacted the police department to report the strange lights, but Durant and other police officers are at a loss to explain just what it was hovering in their skies. Here's the thing. It's been 22 years since that incident now, and if there weren't any military folks in the air, and so many witnesses saw this, I'm leaning towards an other on this. In fourth place, we have the Alderney UFO sighting. On April 23rd of 2007, Ray Bauer, a 50-year-old pilot with 18 years flying experience, reported seeing a cigar-shaped brilliant white light in the sky. Now, he first thought that it was reflected light from greenhouses on the nearby island of Guernsey, before realizing it was a stationary object, approximately the size of a Boeing 737, at an altitude of around 2,000 feet and at a distance of roughly 40 miles. Bauer said that he approached the light and looked at it through his binoculars. He also said he saw a second object moving in formation with the first set of light, later stating it was around closer to the island of Guernsey. He said the UFO was clearly visual for approximately 9 minutes. After landing in Alderney, Bauer made an official report to the Civil Aviation Authority, labeling the incident as a near miss. He then flew the return leg of his flight to Southampton, but did not see the objects again. By the 25th of April of 2007, the British Ministry of Defence had stated that it would not investigate the reported sighting. Approximately a week after that sighting, the MOD stated the incident had taken place in French airspace, and so it was outside their responsibility. 2 weeks after that, the MOD released information connected with the report, including a statement from a second pilot. The report of the sighting published by the MOD reads in its entirety. First object was bright orange-yellow, there was a gap in light or darker area. Second object was identical. Several passengers on his aircraft had noticed the light, one of whom described it as sunlight-colored. In 2021, he said it was a very sharply defined, solid, bright yellow-gold object with a couple of black bands on the side that were kind of shimmering. 2 passengers reported seeing the light to the Evening Standard, one of them describing it as an orange light, kind of like an elongated oval. Patrick Patterson, a pilot from the Channel Islands airline Blue Island, reported that he saw a similarly described object in the same approximate position. It was later reported that this pilot saw an object behind him to his left at around 1,950 feet. One interpretation of this event was that this was an atmospheric phenomenon. Despite the pilot's openness about the incident, the cooperation of the military, and countless eyewitness reports from passengers and people on the ground, the incident remains a total mystery. I'm just saying, there are too many witnesses for this to be anything fake. In third place, we have the Belgian UFO wave. So the Belgian UFO wave began in November of 1989 and peaked with the events of the night of the 30th to the 31st of March 1990. On that night, one unknown object was tracked on radar, and 2 Belgian Air Force F-16s were sent to investigate, with neither pilot reporting seeing the object. No reports were received from the public on the date, but over the next 2 weeks, reports from 143 people who claimed to have witnessed the object were received, all of them after the event. Over the ensuing months, many others claimed to have witnessed these events as well. Following the incident, the Belgian Air Force released a report detailing the events of that night. Yeah, I'll backtrack, I promise. At around 11 o'clock at night on the 30th of March, the supervisor for the Control Reporting Center, or CRC, at Glans received reports that 3 unusual lights were seen moving towards Thorenby-Gemblou, which lies to the southeast of Brussels. Glans CRC requested that the Wever Gendarmerie send a patrol to confirm the sightings. Approximately 10 minutes later, some reports stated that a second set of lights were seen, moving towards the first triangle. Traffic Center Control tracked one object only on its radar, and an order to scramble 2 F-16 fighters from Beauvais Air Base was given. Throughout this time, in reports after the event, some people claimed that the phenomenon was visible from the ground, describing the whole formation as maintaining their relative positions while moving slowly across the sky. And over the next hour, the 2 scrambled F-16s attempted 9 separate interceptions of the target. On 3 occasions, they managed to obtain a radar lock for a few seconds, but these were later shown to be radar locks on each other. After around 12:30 in the morning, radar contact became much more sporadic, and the final confirmed lock took place at around 40 minutes. After midnight. Following several further unconfirmed contacts, the F-16s eventually returned to the base shortly after 1 a.m. Members of the Wever Gendarmerie, who had been sent to confirm the original report, described 4 lights now being arranged in a square formation, all making short, jerky movements before gradually losing their luminosity and disappearing in 4 separate directions at around 1:30. During one of the radar locks, the UFO accelerated from 150 miles per hour to over 1,100 miles per hour, while changing altitude from 9,000 feet to 5,000 feet in a matter of seconds. After his retirement, Major General Wilfred de Bruy wrote in a statement that the Belgian UFO wave was exceptional, and the Air Force could not identify the nature, origin, and intentions of the reported phenomena. The Belgian objects have still never been explained. Look, Air Force folks are the ones to trust in situations like this. They're literally trained on how to recognize aircrafts in the sky. In second place, we have a sighting in Alaska. Japan Airlines cargo flight 1628 was a UFO incident that occurred on November 17th of 1986, involving a Japanese Boeing 747-200F cargo aircraft. I'm learning a lot about planes today. The aircraft was en route from Paris to Narita International Airport, near Tokyo, with a cargo of Beaujolais wine. Wine. Focus, Alexa, focus. Over the Reykjavik to Anchorage section of the flight at around 1711, so place what those cases says, 511 over eastern Alaska, the crew first witnessed two unidentified objects to their left. These abruptly rose from below and closed in to escort the aircraft. Each had two rectangular arrays of what appeared to be glowing nozzles or thrusters, though their bodies remained obscured by darkness. When closest, the aircraft's cabin was lit up and the captain could feel their heat on his face. These two crafts departed before a third, much larger disc-shaped object started trailing them. Anchorage Air Traffic Control requested an oncoming United Airlines flight to confirm the unidentified traffic, but when it and a military craft sighted plane 1628 at around 10 to 6, no other craft could be distinguished. Captain Terrochi contacted Anchorage Air Traffic Control and requested, a change of course. The UFO followed the plane despite any of the captain's maneuvers. The sighting lasted 50 minutes and ended in the vicinity of Denali. All of the data, including ground radar that captured the unidentified craft, was collected and presented at a meeting with the FBI and the CIA. After reviewing all the material, the government officials decided that this was the first radar recording of a UFO. Yep, I didn't stutter. The government confirmed this. In first place, we have the Shag Harbor UFO incident. So this incident was the reported impact of an unknown large object into waters near Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, a tiny fishing village on the Atlantic coast, on October 4th of 1967. The reports were investigated by the RCMP, Canadian Coast Guard, the Navy, and the Air Force, as well as the U.S. Condon Committee. I had to research that because I first thought it was like a typo for condom, and I almost busted out laughing. Alrighty. Time for facts. At about 11:20 p.m. Atlantic Daylight Time, at least 11 people saw a low-flying lit object heading towards the harbor. Multiple witnesses reported hearing a whistling sound like, a large kaboom device, and then a whoosh, and then finally a loud bang. While en route to Toronto, while flying over Sherbrooke and St. John, Quebec, at around 3,658 meters from the Halifax International Airport, Air Canada officer Robert Ralph pointed out to Captain Pierre Charbonneau on Flight 305 that there was, something strange out the left side of the aircraft at 7:15 p.m. In his report, the captain reported an object tracking along on a parallel course a few miles away. He described it as a brilliantly lit, rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing it. At 7:19 p.m., the pilots noticed a sizable silent explosion near the large object, and 2 minutes later, a second explosion occurred which faded to a blue cloud around the object. Meanwhile, while standing at the wheelhouse of his vessel, Captain Leo Howard Mercy was looking at 4 blips on his Decker radar that were stationary. When he looked up at about 28 kilometers from the vessel's windows, he could see the 4 bright objects situated in a roughly rectangular formation. The entire crew of nearly 20 fishermen stood on deck and watched the object in the northeastern sky. Mercy radioed the Rescue Coordination Center and the harbor master in Halifax, asking for an explanation, and filed a report with the Lunenburg RCMP outlining his sighting when they returned to port. Over in Halifax, the Chronicle Herald and local radio stations reported a glowing object that was seen by many people who called their newsroom. They reported witnessing strange glowing objects flying around Halifax at around 10 p.m. Assuming an aircraft had crashed, within about 15 minutes, 2 RCMP officers arrived at the scene. Concerned for survivors, the RCMP detachment contacted the Rescue Coordination Center in Halifax to advise them of the situation and ask if any aircrafts were missing. Before any attempt at rescue could be made, the flying object, with the lights still showing, started to sink and disappeared from view, so a rescue mission was quickly assembled. Within half an hour of the crash, local fishing boats went out to the crash site in the waters of the Gulf of Maine off Shag Harbor to look for survivors. Here's the fun part. No survivors, bodies, or debris were taken, either by the fishermen or by a Canadian Coast Guard search and rescue cutter, which arrived about an hour later from nearby Clark's Harbor. By the next morning, RCC Halifax had determined that no aircrafts were missing. While still tasked with the search, the captain of the Canadian Coast Guard cutter received a radio message from RCC Halifax that all commercial, private, and military aircraft were accounted for along the eastern seaboard in both Atlantic provinces and New England. That same morning, RCC Halifax also sent a priority telex to the air desk at Air Force headquarters in Ottawa, which handled all civilian and military UFO sightings, informing them of the crash and that all conventional explanations such as aircraft, flares, had been dismissed. The object was never officially identified and was therefore referred to as an unidentified flying object in the Government of Canada documents. Yep, That was the name. I'm just gonna repeat this. The government of Canada officially confirmed it as a UFO. 2 days after the incident had been observed, a detachment of Navy divers from Fleet Diving Unit Atlantic was assembled, and for the next 3 days, they combed the seafloor of the Gulf of Maine off Shag Harbor looking for an object. The final report said no trace of an object was found. Just saying. Fascinating that no one found anything, and that the government confirmed it was a UFO. So take that, skeptics.
Number 5. Something falling over Montana. It seems a week's worth of sightings of strange crafts flying over the US and Canada just wasn't enough to fill anyone's appetite for UFO content. There's always something strange afoot or something strange falling from the sky. Just this week over Billings, Montana, residents have been concerned after something mysterious fell from the sky. Footage captured recently shows trails of orange smoke, thick, falling from the sky. Residents have been left in the dark without much official answer as to what had happened, and if this object was connected to these other objects that have been shot down at all. Luckily, through the internet, we're able to take a look at Billings residents' thoughts and concerns through it. On a Reddit thread dedicated to the sighting, multiple users recorded some strange going-ons around the city. Multiple posters reported that there was an increased military presence, with loads of reports of seeing military aircraft flying around overhead for days prior and after. Residents of Billings on a Facebook group asking questions about it noted an increase of unmarked black SUVs around the area as well. Could this be a little cover-up? Do we have a development of a modern-day Roswell on our hands? It's definitely a bit odd amidst all that's currently going on with strange UFO sightings. We haven't really heard so much as a word about this on mainstream news stations, or maybe they think we've all just had enough of UFO coverage. Well, not us, not Top 5 Scary. Personally, I'll be watching this with great interest. So I'll pass this one on to you guys though. What do we think exactly is going on here? Any Montana natives who might be able to help us out just a little bit? Because it strikes me as extremely odd. What do we think here? Alien craft? Recovered drone? Military testing? Glitch in the Matrix? Mothman? All of these are seeming equally likely right now. And if you just cannot get enough UFO footage, hey, don't worry, neither can we. We've got videos on UFOs, aliens, NASA conspiracies and cover-ups, and tons of true stories absolutely out of this world. Not your scene? No problem. We got loads on the channel and something scary for the whole family. So take a look, subscribe, and stay scared. But stay watching this video because I got more UFOs for you. Number 4, the floating beehive. Now our next clip's origins is a little bit disputed, and it's a bit of a mystery as to when and where exactly it was sighted. But what most people can agree on is just how bizarre this footage is. So why don't you take a look with me. This object has been alleged to have been spotted over Denver, but it's also been alleged to have been seen over Spain. Entirely possible it's been over both. This footage has been stabilized and cleaned up as much as possible to try and provide a clear look at whatever is floating around up there, and well, I have no idea whatsoever. It kind of looks like a floating beehive that almost seems like it's got a combustion inside of it. It looks like something is erupting in a flame. And maybe it's just me and my own tired eyes, but it almost looks like whatever this thing is twisting shape and contorting midair in a way that almost makes it seem organic. Now, what I like about this clip is how different whatever this thing is looks like compared to most UFO, UAP footage I've seen out there. More than a few commenters pointed out that they think it looks like a stone face, with a bunch referencing that one episode of Rick and Morty with all the giant alien heads that come to Earth and they do the Get Swifty song. It's a good one, to be fair. Definitely a fair comparison. Unfortunately, even with stabilization and enhancement and cleaning up the video, it's still extremely difficult to ascertain just what exactly it is we're dealing with here. Doesn't seem human in origin, and it definitely seems like it's something that could have been out of this world. So, if anyone's got any insight onto this thing, please point us towards it. Number 3, the floating cigar. I got another bit of stabilized footage of something strange in the air from Reddit for you. Check out our next clip. And may I say a big thank you to the folks out there who are stabilizing their UFO footage. That is leaps and bounds ahead of what we've been doing with UFO stuff for years. No wonder we're making such strides in recent years. This clip was posted to Reddit from a user whose account has now been deleted. Deleted by choice or silenced? Maybe clear your browser history after watching this video, just to be safe. Hey, you should probably do that anyway. I'm not judging you, but you know, make sure. Anyway, let's get to the clip. Take a look. This is definitely one of the more bizarre UFO clips I've seen in a minute, and I spend literally all day in an office watching bizarre UFO clips, so I think that ought to count for something. When you think of a UFO, you kind of think of a flying saucer, cute little dome up top, or maybe you think of like a cool sci-fi looking fighter jet, but I think very seldom do you think of a floating cylinder going through the air like this, sort of hovering in one spot menacingly. It looks like it's radiating lights, either with a seriously reflective surface, or it's producing them itself and kind of just vibing up there in the clouds. Worth noting is that across several reports of unexplained phenomena and mysterious crafts reported by Air Force and Navy pilots, one of the more repeated ones was strange cylindrical craft, and a comparison very frequently was made of a floating cigar. And whatever this is certainly does look like a floating cigar, enough to give me a bit of pause, but I also read hundreds upon hundreds of alien stories and watch UFO videos all day, so I'm more of a tinfoil hat conspiracist than the average duck. You know what this kind of reminds me of though? Is that little gadget in Men in Black that they use to erase everybody's mind when they see something they're not supposed to. Looks a ton like that to me. Maybe that was the point of this thing. A mass amnesiac designed to quickly flash over the population and erase any recent memories of UFO and UAP spottings. That, or it's just like a weird weather balloon. That's what it ends up being like 99.9% of the time. Number 2, floating triangle. Now our next clip is another one shared to Reddit, and hey, while I'm here, shout out to the UFO subreddit for making finding clips of alien crafts just so much easier than it was a few years ago. You gotta love the information age. Now, keep your eyes peeled for this next one coming up, because it is a serious doozy. I had to do a little bit of digging for this clip, put on my newsman fedora, try and get down to business, but from what I could turn up, this footage was captured somewhere soaring over Guatemala City. In the video, we can see what is a pretty clear triangle shape flying through the air with blinding bright lights casting down onto the surface. This clip to me has that feel of UFO footage, you know, the vibe. It looks a bit like something that could have come out of a movie, which does almost make me feel like maybe it's too good to be true. Of course, there's also the possibility that whatever I'm looking at right now is just a very advanced spy plane seen from down below and giving off a very unique silhouette. Like the cigar clip before it, black triangle UFOs are one of the more commonly reported descriptions of UFOs. In fact, even on the comments of this clip are several commenters stating that they've all seen similar things. Now, obviously, take that with a grain of salt, of course, because they're YouTube comments. No offense to my beloved YouTube commenters, you know I love you. But it does help paint the picture that whatever is happening has happened more than once. Now, my theory for this clip is I think this most likely is something military and advanced, and if I wanted to kind of get out there with my theorizing, which I do, it could potentially be something reverse engineered from recovered technology. Luis Elizondo, who I mention in these videos all the time, is a former US intelligence agent and a notable figure in the world of UFO discussions. And he's claimed multiple times that he knows that the US has reverse engineered craft from recovered UFO parts, and has insisted a few times that the craft in particular he is referring to is triangular in nature. Could this be what he's alluding to? Completely possible. Time will tell, of course. At number 1, Hawaii re-entry. I try to save the best clip for last, and I sure hope this doesn't disappoint. If that last one from Guatemala didn't have you convinced that there's tech out there we can't explain, why don't you try this on for size? This recently captured footage came to us from a Redditor, One Gold Breadfruit. Thank you. Take a look at this bizarre experience they caught pulling into Maui, Hawaii. If you're watching this on your phone, crank the brightness just for a few seconds and see if that helps out a bit. It almost seems like what we're looking at is something huge being rendered invisible by some cloaking technology, maybe on a loan from the Predator. What's throwing me most about this clip is that just the size of whatever is being caught on camera here. Most UAP or UFO videos, it's pretty difficult to figure out how large something is when you're looking at a blurry dot in the sky. But here, it's almost like we're face to face with what looks like a massive craft. Some commenters have suggested that what you're looking at right now is a satellite re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, citing a particular event in 2008 as proof, though the footage is dated from 2020, so not entirely sure. Some other commenters argued that it didn't look like something re-entering the atmosphere, as there was no visible trails of any kind on the craft as it entered. I can't say too much about that. I am not a rocket scientist even remotely. Just look at me. I'm not giving off rocket scientist vibes. I'm a YouTuber and I'm a UFO enthusiast. If you have some insight, I am definitely all ears. But until then, I'll probably just be watching these clips over and over again, pausing frame by frame in a dark basement like I'm Agent Mulder sitting alone trying to get to the bottom of this. I just want to believe, darn it.
Number 5. Nick Pope. Nick Pope served in the British Ministry of Defense, aka the MOD, and was actively engaged in the investigation of UFO reports. During his tenure at the MOD from 1985 to 2006, Pope held the position of a civil servant, specializing in defense and security issues. His role in the UFO desk of the MOD from 1991 to 1994 brought him to the forefront of analyzing and assessing unidentified aerial phenomena that was reported by civilians and military personnel. Pope's responsibilities included the examination of UFO sightings, compiling reports, and offering insights into the potential national security implications of such incidents. His work involved liaising with various government agencies, intelligence services, and international counterparts to comprehensively evaluate the data surrounding UFO encounters. After his government service, Pope transitioned into the public domain and became a recognized figure in the discussion surrounding UFOs. His extensive background in government service and his intimate involvement in the investigation of UFO reports provided him with unique perspectives. Pope's decision to share his insights and knowledge with the public contributed to his emergence as a prominent commentator on UFO-related issues. Pope's public commentary extends beyond his own experiences, exploring broader discussions and topics surrounding the existence of extraterrestrial phenomena, government transparency, and the need for a more systematic approach to studying and understanding UFOs. His articulate and measured presentations have positioned him as a go-to source for media outlets seeking informed perspectives on the subject. Nick Pope does not claim any personal witness to UFO events. His role in the bureaucratic machinery of the British Ministry of Defense and following transition into public UFO discourse have added a valuable, interesting layer to the ongoing dialogue about unidentified aerial phenomena. His contributions, grounded in factual information and analytical acumen, continue to shape the narrative around UFOs and their significance in the realms of national security and public awareness. Number 4. Luis Elizondo. Luis Elizondo, a former intelligence officer, served as the director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or the AATIP, at the Pentagon. His position in the government ended in his decision to resign from the Pentagon, a departure that marked a pivotal moment in his public disclosure of information regarding unidentified aerial phenomena. Elizondo's background in intelligence and his leadership role within the ATIP provided him with personal, anecdotal, and unique insights into matters pertaining to unidentified aerial threats. Following his resignation, he transitioned from a position of government authority to becoming a prominent figure in the public discourse on UAP. Elizondo's decision to step forward and share his knowledge contributed to the growing awareness and discussion surrounding unidentified aerial phenomena. His revelations did not merely focus on acknowledging the existence of UAPs, but extended to discussions about the need for increased transparency and research into these phenomena. Yes, Elizondo. Yay! Elizondo's influential public statements, interviews, and engagements in various forums became key in shaping the narrative around UAP, influencing public perception and generating widespread interest in the subject. Elizondo's credibility was further amped by his association with the Pentagon's ATIP, a program specifically established to investigate and analyze unidentified aerial threats. This institutional connection added weight to his disclosures and positioned him as a central figure capable of offering informed perspectives on the matter. Elizondo participated in interviews, documentaries, and public events, disseminating information and advocating for a more comprehensive understanding of these aerial phenomena. His role in the public sphere marked a departure from the customary secrecy surrounding such matters within government agencies. While controversies and debates surround the nature of UAP and their potential implications, Luis Elizondo's shift from a discrete government role to a public advocate marked a significant chapter in the ongoing dialogue about unidentified aerial phenomena. Number 3. John Callahan. John Callahan, the former division chief of the Accidents and Investigations branch of the Federal Aviation Administration, made claims that he had received information about a UFO sighting from Japanese pilots. According to Callahan, the government was involved in a cover-up, concealing crucial evidence related to this otherworldly encounter. Callahan's claims surrounded an incident that occurred in the late 1980s, which involved Japanese airline pilots reporting a close encounter with an unidentified flying object. The details of the sighting raised questions regarding the possible existence of extraterrestrial life and the government's role in suppressing such information. Callahan said that the FAA had indisputable evidence, including radar data and audio recordings of communication between the pilots and air traffic controllers. Callahan's claims were built on the foundation that the government intentionally withheld this information from the public, which further sparked concerns about transparency and accountability from the government. His claims fueled already bountiful suspicions among UFO enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists who believe that governments worldwide are actively concealing evidence of extraterrestrial encounters. Callahan's credibility lent weight and plausibility to his claims. As a former high-ranking official within the FAA, he held a position that frequently granted him access to extremely sensitive information and insider knowledge. His decision to come forward and expose the cover-up added a sense of authenticity to the narrative. Skepticism and scrutiny quickly followed Callahan's publicized revelations. People questioned the reliability of the evidence and questioned the motivations behind his disclosure. Some argued that the claims were sensationalist and lacked the necessary evidence to substantiate them. The absence of concrete proof beyond Callahan's testimony left room for doubt. The case brought attention to the greater issues of UFO disclosure and transparency within government agencies. It fueled public demand for greater openness regarding unidentified aerial phenomena, prompting calls for the declassification of documents. John Callahan's claims opened a safe of speculation, inviting closer examination of the relationship between officials and the mysteries of the sky. Number 2. Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell, a distinguished astronaut who was part of the Apollo 14 mission, left a mark not only on the lunar surface, but also in ufology and conspiracies of government secrecy. In 2008, Mitchell openly shared his suspicions regarding the existence of extraterrestrial life, and made allegations of a cover-up. Mitchell's cosmic revelation was rooted in his very unique perspective, as he was one of the few individuals who had ventured beyond our planet's confines. Having spent a total of 9 hours on the moon's surface, Mitchell's experiences ignited a level of curiosity that had never been seen before. His claim that extraterrestrial life exists was grounded in the belief that the vastness of the universe makes it statistically improbable for Earth to be the sole harbor of life, which, you know, I agree with. It is so insane to me that some people think we are the only sentient life in our literally giant universe. It was Mitchell's claim of a government cover-up that catapulted his allegations into a realm of controversy and subjected him to severe skepticism. According to Mitchell, high-ranking officials were aware of the presence of extraterrestrial beings, but actively chose to conceal this information from the public. Their secrecy, he argued, was motivated by concerns over societal upheaval and the potential impact on established power structures. Mitchell's claims are situated within the broader context of UFO conspiracy theories and a long-standing distrust of governmental transparency. While his status as an astronaut lends a sense of credibility to his statements, people often remind others that Mitchell's assertions lack concrete evidence. The absence of verifiable proof has led many to dismiss his claims as influenced by personal beliefs rather than factual occurrences. Despite the skepticism surrounding Mitchell's allegations, they have sparked discussions about the possibility of extraterrestrial life and the extent of government knowledge on the matter.
Number 5. El Cajon, California. Our first clip today comes from the beautiful Californian city of El Cajon. Let's take a look at something strange that was spotted in the sky that's got the locals talking. This clip was captured and posted to Reddit by user Exporius. Oh, Exporius, that's fun to say. Say that at home if you haven't yet. Let's take a look at the clip first. Pretty interesting stuff, huh? Definitely something that makes you want to take another glimpse. When it was posted to Reddit, Exporius sounded off in the comments and offered a little bit of context as to what was going on. Here it is. 3 black spheres appeared overhead my apartment complex in the afternoon in El Cajon, California. The objects were unlike balloons, rotating around each other and seemingly unaffected by the wind. My partner, who you can hear talking in the background about UFOs, agrees that the shapes were moving in an odd formation relative to the wind. They were also flickering in the sky, disappearing in and out of visibility, not at all like the metallic reflection of a Mylar balloon. The objects disappeared shortly after my girlfriend made me stop filming to go inside. Suddenly, the spheres whipped around about 90 degrees and vanished. Oh, his girlfriend made him stop filming to go inside. Imagine we had the perfect evidence of UFOs, but somebody had to stop filming because they had to go unload the dishwasher. Anyway, Exporius finishes off by saying, "Very strange. I have no idea what these are." And neither do we. This clip garnered a lot of attention in the subreddit where it was posted, getting people chatting about what it could possibly be, although with anything like this there were a fair share of skeptics. Some dismissed the sighting as being nothing more than a flock of birds moving in on a particularly strange triangular fashion, while others suspected it could have been drone. What is a bird if not a feathery drone? So what do we think, my fair viewers? Something worth writing a UAP report on, or was this something a real bird brain posted? You let me know down below, okay? And while I've got you, you. If you're not already subscribed to Top 5 Scary, now would be a great time to fix that mistake. We got loads of UFO clips. I mean, we're on part 7 of this series. You know we got UFO clips. Storytelling, cryptids, monsters, mythologies, terrible stories, stories too good to be real, and stories too real to be good. Stay subscribed, don't miss a scream, but keep watching this video first, okay? Moving on. Number 4, from a pilot. Our next clip was posted by the History Channel, of all places. I guess technically if a UFO did appear to us, that would be like a pretty big part of history, right? Still, it's funny to me that that's where I'm getting my UFO clips these days. This clip isn't some blurry footage shot from somebody staring right up at the sun. Instead, we have a front row seat from a B-320 pilot's cockpit as a pilot over a commercial flight in Colombia saw something truly bizarre that they couldn't explain. Why don't you take a look at this cuboid UAP that looks out of this world. Let's roll the clip. A metallic looking object that's got a bizarre shape, almost looking like somebody's rolling a giant D20 through the sky, comes hurtling into frame. When you slow it down, it does look a lot like a flying cube, so if you were worried about the Borg coming to assimilate us, this might just be that proof confirming that. Now, in the excerpt from the History Channel clip, they theorized that what this could be a probe or a drone of some type for an alien civilization sending out a first wave of scouts before the rest of the party gets here, and this strange object could be one of those drones, trying to sneak on by but being caught on camera. Now, not everyone is as convinced as our friends of the History Channel. More than a few viewers have thought that what that could have been caught in the sky here is nothing more than a balloon, and some strange angles are making it look a lot more alien and cuboid than it really is. So what do we think? Scouts from another civilization coming in to suss out the situation? Or is this clip posted by people who are just full of hot air? I'm getting punny today. Number 3, Arizona. Our next sighting comes to us again from our favorite friend for strange clips of flying objects. You know it and I know it. It's the UFO subreddit. Seeing as how we're on part 7, I think I owe the moderators and users of the UFO subreddit a top 5 Congressional Medal of Honor. There you go. Anyway, this next clip posted by user Giancarlo the Great showcases a UAP caught on camera in Phoenix, Arizona that's got everybody sounding off. Let's roll the clip and see if you can stay silent watching this. Now, it's hard not to see what the original poster was talking about because I'm pretty sure you saw the flashing lights floating eerily in the sky like a beacon. What's kind of funny is that the same day, from the same location, Phoenix, Arizona, another user on Reddit unintentionally recorded another angle of the exact same sighting, or at the very least the same object on a similar trajectory. And in that clip, we can see it pulsating a bit. It looks a little more circular from here. In fact, several commenters across both of these videos commented that they all saw this in Phoenix. So it's possible that this sighting is bigger than we think, or that there's just not much going on in Phoenix, Arizona. No offense, I've never been, I'm sure it's lovely. I'm not sure which is more likely or which scares me more. Now, I've got to admit, this one's got me raising my eyebrows just a little bit because I can't quite figure it out just yet. Some users on Reddit suggested that they thought what this could be is something being dragged in the sky, with some users suggesting that it looked like something was tethered and this could be a custom drone or a nighttime kite, which, side note, was not something I knew anyone did, but I've since learned is kind of a hobby. I'm now wondering how many years of UFO footage has all just been kites with like LED straps attached to the back of them, because I'm starting to suspect it was most of them. So what do we think? Aliens? Kites? Either is possible, really. Number 2, Metapod. Our next clip comes to us from Instagram with the pretty funny caption, Metapod strikes again. You'll see what I mean in a moment. But I will say, this is basic stuff. Everybody knows Metapod can only use harden. 0 out of 10. Go back. Do a lap. Now, we've featured clips from this particular UAP or style of UAP before on this channel, maybe the brand or whoever manufactures these crafts. So it's fitting that the caption is Metapod strikes again. Well, this particular thing baffled me the last time I talked about it, and it's baffling us again all the way here. So here it is one more time. Let's roll that clip for you. Now, a quick aside for my viewership who aren't big gamers out there, Metapod is a Pokemon that's shaped like a cocoon, and I can definitely see where this Metapod comparison comes from. That's definitely what this creature looks like some sort of strange cocoon. It seems organic to me in a very weird way, you know? As if unlike a lot of other UAP sightings, this thing is something that's actually alive on its own. It almost looks like it moves a little, you know? Like it wiggles just a little bit, like it's got a little jiggle to it. Are you following me with this? I also feel like it looks a bit like a floating beehive. Maybe this thing is kind of like a Rorschach test. You see what you want to see. Now, the fact that this thing keeps popping up with different sightings definitely has me very curious as to what it could possibly possibly be. Also, if there's any Rick and Morty fans out there, I swear this thing has like the exact same silhouette as the giant head that appears in the Get Swifty episode that asks humanity to show it what it's got. Maybe that's why this thing keeps coming back. We haven't shown it what we've got yet, and nobody has performed Get Swifty for it. So maybe get on that, and maybe we can appease this thing. Number 1, Sean Cahill. Our final clip for us today comes to us from Sean Cahill, a UAP enthusiast and a former Navy serviceman who is a veteran of 20 years, who in his retirement has become a decently big name in the UFO community as we set out there to look for the truth. Why don't you take a look at this clip he posted on Twitter and see if you can spot the UAP hovering up above. They'll circle it in red too, don't worry. Now we get a beautiful look at a mountain range, looks like a Windows XP background, and something very strange floating slowly moving across the horizon. Something flat looking like a disc, looking like a real classic flying saucer looking thing straight out of the movies. Now, at first glance, it's definitely got my attention because it's not often you get UAP clips that are this broad in daylight and this clear in view. I'm used to somebody shaking it around like they put their phone in the drying machine. Now, as always with stuff like this, I like to call attention to the more skeptical side of things because I think that gives us an air of credibility. More than a few people on Reddit suggested that this really could be something as uninteresting as just a plane moving slowly through the horizon, and looking at something like a short takeoff and landing private plane, it definitely seems like it would be very easy to make that mistake, but I personally want to believe that a 20-year Navy vet would know what a civilian plane would look like. So as always, my ghouls and goblins, I'm tossing this one over to you. My gang in the comments, what do we think? Could this be an alien presence caught on camera, or is this just a plain hoax? Plain, like plain, that's a little pun for you. That one's just for the scholars. You're gonna get that on the car ride home.
Number 5, you saw what at the airport? Flight operations at Tiganjarat International Airport in Imphal, Manipur were halted for several hours on Sunday after what was described by officials as an unidentified flying object, good old UFOs, was seen hovering above the airport. I've got a direct quote. Due to the sighting of an unidentified flying object within Imphal controlled airspace, 2 flights have been diverted and 3 departing flights have been delayed. Flight operations commenced after receipt of clearance from the competent authority, according to Airport Director Shipeni Kaixing. Sources said the UFO was sighted by a pilot of an Indigo flight that was about to depart at around 2:20 in the afternoon, and all flight operations were immediately suspended but resumed around 6 p.m. Now the UFO was said to have been visible until around 4 p.m. We've got another quote. I have no idea what was going on. I was informed that the flight could not take off because there was some kind of object hovering in the sky, an unnamed aerial vehicle of some sort. Officials of the flight operator, however, were not sure what the object was, according to Bhaskar Salam, a passenger. Now Imphal West Superintendent of Police Kush Shivakanta Singh said the object hovered for several hours, baffling everyone. He said, we have no idea what the object was and how big it was. It hovered in the sky for hours and then disappeared. The IAF scrambled its Rafale fighter aircraft to search for them, according to defense sources, and they further said the aircraft equipped with advanced sensors carried out low-level flying over the suspected area, but it didn't find anything there. So after the first aircraft returned, 1 more Rafale fighter was sent for the search, but the UFO wasn't seen around the area. The agencies concerned are trying to find out the details of the UFO, as there are videos of the UFO over the airport. By the way, fun fact, as of 2023, India is one of the most populated countries in the world, and multiple flights diverted, so everybody around there had eyes on it. There has to be good footage somewhere, I'm just hoping it gets out here. As of the time of this recording, we just have a little bit. India has a legitimate government. They had legitimate aerospace safety concerns. Shutting down an entire international airport is a huge deal. Trust me, I've been to Pearson. So meanwhile, the mainstream media is claiming that it was drones. The announcement they lost the UFO was buried under the announcement that the government of India is shutting down the internet in the state of Manipur for the next 5 days because of the current violence in the region. Now, the online general public has made a suggestion that doesn't make sense to me, because once again, they're saying oh, drones. But how would an area besieged by crazy violence be in possession of one of only 2 multiple $1,000 drones that could fly for 3.5 hours and break the law without punishment? I don't know a lot about drones, but I did ask some friends who do a lot of drone footage, and they couldn't even think of a single quadrocopter style drone, which is the only one that could stay in place for that long, that would have anything close to you enough battery power to have that kind of intensity to fly for more than a few hours. So if this is a drone, somebody, somewhere, somehow steroided the battery life. Like, it's just not possible. Yes, it could be a weather balloon. We've all heard that explanation before, because that's what it always is when the government doesn't know what something is. There's probably never going to be enough evidence to say one way or the other, so it'll eventually be designated a weather balloon by one government or another. So I'm calling it now. Come back in, like 2 weeks, check this video. Alexa Morgan is saying it now. Somebody's going to say it was a weather balloon. Number 4, the 2015 Gulf of Mexico. A video uploaded 8 years ago to the interwebs is just starting to get some traction now thanks to a recent Reddit post. User 7R34 wrote in the description, a friend of his took this video on his phone. The video is clear, shape and lights are visible, mentioning specifically pink flashing lights. Okay, I love pink, I'm a little biased. He sent the video from his cell phone through email, which is why it's compressed to a lower quality, and the uploader was trying to figure out how to get the footage back to its original quality, but admits he isn't the best with technology, and hey, neither am I sometimes. Thankfully, I've got an iPhone, it does it for me. Apparently, the platform location is a mile away from the Flower Garden Reef and 130 miles from offshore, and the UFO is around 8 miles away from that. So when the object started coming closer, it seemed as if our friend stopped recording, and apparently, according to the uploader, he got nervous and headed indoors, which, like, I don't blame you. If I saw something weird in the sky, I'd be running away as well. The flight characteristics reminded him of the way an RC drone flies, but at the time, no civilian setup could go that far. Not to mention, once again, the battery power required for the trip. Back in the day, that just wasn't possible for a drone. Trust me, I know somebody that had one, like one of the original drones. Just not possible. Number 3, Canadian Triangle. Okay, not Canadian Tire, folks. Relax, relax. This is not a reward system. And yes, I'll be the first to admit we don't know as much about this footage as some of the other entries on today's list, so bear with me here. I found this video also while surfing Reddit earlier, and while the site does tend to be, the Wild West for finding credible information at times, I think my nonsense filter is pretty decent at this point. Also remember, this is part 4. We are 20 entries in. I gotta find something. Around 4 months ago, user CuriousAd5774 said, "Don't got much to say about this video other than when my dad originally sent it to me, I felt like it had to be a UFO, and there's nothing else that seemed to explain it. Canada is notorious for sightings, and I myself have seen a few. This was taken way before drones were being used regularly, and I'd say this video is easily 10 years old." Alrighty folks, time to break this down. As a Canadian, I feel like I'm an expert now. While watching the video, you can see a number of different orbs in a dark sky, and the way they move and interact cannot be explained by science. Now, user Death Perception has an idea what it could be, saying, "This is pretty good footage. Yeah, it's dark and an old video, but if it's real, then it's clearly the typical black triangle that's been seen since at least the 90s. Yet another user, only capital 5393, was able to relate to the footage, saying it was exactly what their brother and mother described way back in the 90s. So we're validating the other point. They were driving in New Hampshire in the wee hours of the morning, going south, and this UFO came and followed them for a while on the highway. Now there was nobody else around, and it got above them and just sort of followed them. The lights are exactly what they described though, how they kinda spin in a circle around the center light. Now this user has never seen anything what they described until that point. Now they would have sent this video to the other folks to, corroborate, but sadly their mom passed away in 2015. She was an Air Force flight nurse during Vietnam and had never seen anything like it before. She'd actually heard rumors about UFOs while being in the Air Force, and the sighting made her quite interested in the subject. She reported it and joined MUFON, and at one meeting she sat at the same table with Betty Hill and talked with them. So they really wish that their mom was still there to show her it, which, hey, this is fascinating. Like, the proof is there, folks. The proof is there. I keep saying it. It's there. Number 2, now you see it, now you don't. So back in 2014, the disappearance of the Boeing 777 with 227 passengers and 12 crew members on board led to a search effort stretching from the Indian Ocean, west of Australia, to Central Asia. So for context, if you didn't know about this, because I totally forgot about it, Flight 370 took off at 12:41 a.m. local time and reached a cruising altitude of 10,700 meters at 1:01 a.m. The Aircraft Communication Addressing and Reporting System, which transmitted data about the aircraft's performance, sent its last transmission at 1:07 and was subsequently switched off. The last voice communication from the crew occurred at 1:19, and at 1:21 the plane's transponder, which communicated with air traffic control, switched off, just as the plane was about to enter Vietnamese airspace over the South China Sea. At 1:30, Malaysian military and civilian radar began tracking the plane as it turned around and then flew southwest over the Malay Peninsula and then northwest over the Strait of Malacca. At 2:22, Malaysian military radar lost contact with the plane over the Andaman Sea. An Inmarsat satellite in geostationary orbit over the Indian Ocean received hourly signals from Flight 370 and last detected the plane at 8:11. So initial searches for the plane concentrated on the South China Sea. After it was determined that Flight 370 had turned to the west shortly after the transponder was switched off, search efforts moved to the Strait of Malacca and the Andaman Sea. On March 15th, a week after the plane had disappeared, the contact was disclosed. Analysis of the signal could not locate the plane precisely, but did determine the plane might have been anywhere on two arcs, one stretching from Java southward into the Indian Ocean, southwest of Australia, and the other stretching northward across Asia from Vietnam to Turkmenistan. The search area was then expanded to the Indian Ocean southwest of Australia on the southern arc and Southeast Asia, western China, the Indian subcontinent, and Central Asia on the northern arc. Now on March 24th, the Malaysian Prime Minister announced that based on analysis of the final signals, Inmarsat and the UK Air Accidents Investigation Branch had concluded that the flight crashed in a remote part of the Indian Ocean, which made it unlikely that anyone on board survived. But are we actually sure? Flight Officer Jack Chen on board a Royal Australian Air Force flight during the search for the wreckage was hampered by the remote location of the crash site. So beginning on April 6th, an Australian ship detected several possible acoustic pings, possibly from the black box of the plane, around 2,000 miles northwest of Perth, which is in Western Australia. Now further analysis by the AAIB of the Inmarsat data also found a partial signal from the plane at 8:19 a.m., consistent with the location of the acoustic pings, the last of which were heard on April 8th. If the signals were from Flight 370, the flight recorder was likely at the end of its battery life. Further searches were conducted using a robotic submarine, however the pings had been spread over a wide area, so the submarine didn't find any debris, and tests found that a faulty cable in the acoustic equipment could have produced the pings. We didn't find the first piece of debris, by the way, until July 29th of 2015, when the right wing was discovered on a French island, about 37 kilometers west of the Indian Ocean area that was being searched by Australian authorities. Over the next year and a half, 26 more pieces of debris were found on the shores of Tanzania, Mozambique, South Africa, Madagascar, and more. 3 of the 27 pieces were positively identified as coming from Flight 370, and 17 were thought to have likely come from the plane. 2 pieces came from the cabin interior, suggesting that the plane had broken up, but whether the plane broke up in the air or on impact with the ocean could not be determined. A study of the wing flaperon and a piece of the right wing flap showed that the plane had not undergone a controlled descent, so the plane had not been guided to a water landing. Some researchers note that the flight could have struck the water vertically, a possibility in which the results of one modeling study conducted before the flaperon's discovery could explain, the lack of evidence. The debris locations were used to narrow the search area in the ocean, since some possible crash sites would have been unlikely to produce debris. Now here's the thing, there's recent footage believed to be from the day of the incident floating around the interwebs, and if you look closely, the plane just blips out of existence, so I'd love to know why. My theory, there was a UFO up there, they were diving away from it, and also, why haven't we found any human remains? I have questions. Number 1, Aviano UFO. So this footage has been around for some time and was released in the US by researcher Paola Harris at the 36th Annual International UFO Symposium in Denver, Colorado back in 2005. Now Paola lives in Italy and was given a 4th generation copy by an anonymous source who told her the video was recorded in Italy near the infamous Aviano Air Base, which is, kind of the center of a UFO controversy. According to Paola, the original videographer remains unknown, and the object seems to be terrestrial in origin, more properly some kind of military prototype, according to some folks that might think that's what it might be. Now the feature in which the disc disappears at the end raises questions for the Italian researchers, and yes, that's why she thinks the military might be involved. But my theory, something up there. Now, she thinks it's very clearly a flight test, since the videographer was in position focusing the camera where the disc appears initially. The object isn't CGI, and no one has been able to clearly state what it is. So my thoughts, UFOs. Number 5, the Chicago O'Hare Airport sightings. So at around 4:15 p.m. on November 7th of 2006, federal authorities at Chicago O'Hare International Airport received a report that a group of 12 airport employees were witnessing a metallic saucer-shaped craft hovering over gate C-17. The object was first spotted by a ramp employee who was pushing back United Airlines Flight 446, which was departing Chicago for Charlotte, North Carolina. Now the employee made the flight crew aware of the mysterious object above their aircraft, and this unknown craft was also witnessed by the pilots, airline management, and mechanics. So none of the air traffic controllers saw the object, and it didn't show up on radar. But witnesses described it as completely silent, 6 to 24 feet in diameter, in dark gray in color, so kind of like my vehicle. Several independent witnesses outside of the airport also saw the object. One described a disc-shaped craft hovering over the airport, stating that it was obviously not clouds, since the object flew through the clouds at high velocity, leaving a clear blue hole in the cloud layer, which closed itself shortly after the events. According to the Chicago Tribune's John Hilkovich, the disc was visible for approximately 5 minutes and was seen by close to a dozen United Airlines employees, ranging from pilots to supervisors, who heard chatter on the radio and raced out to view it. Both United Airlines and the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA for short, initially denied that they had any information on the O'Hare UFO sighting until the Chicago Tribune newspaper filed a Freedom of Information Act act request. The FAA then ordered an internal review of air traffic communications tapes to comply with the Chicago Tribune request, which subsequently uncovered a call by the United supervisor to an FAA manager in the airport tower concerning the UFO sighting. Now, if I haven't made myself obvious by now, I hate cover-ups, so I'm glad the Freedom of Information request was rightfully granted. UFO investigators have argued that the FAA's refusal to look into the incident contradicts the agency's mandate to investigate possible security breaches at American airports, such as in this case. The National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena published a 155-page report on the sighting and has called for a government inquiry in improved energy sensing technologies. Because if an airborne object can hover for several minutes over a busy airport but not be registered on radar or seen visually from the control tower, it creates a potential threat to human safety. Number 4, the Go Fast video. So this video, uploaded by the UFO investigative group to the STARS Academy of Arts and Sciences in March of 2018, was secured by a, you guessed it, Freedom of Information Act request to the US government. The video was taken in 2015 off of the East Coast by an FA-18F fighter jet using the aircraft's onboard Raytheon AN/ASQ-288 Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared Pod, also known as ATF-LIR. That was a lot of words, and I know myself too well. I'll trip over my tongue if I try saying that a lot, so it shall be called ATF for short if I have to talk about it again. Oh, there we are. ATF is designed to allow pilots to track, target, and destroy targets on the ground at ranges of up to 40 miles. It should be noted that ATF is good at spotting, but not exactly engaging aerial targets. Now the video, nicknamed Go Fast by To The Stars, starts by explaining the various numbers and symbols that appear in the footage. Things like the aircraft's altitude, which was around 25,000 feet, and the fact that the ATF was pointed ahead and to the left of the Super Hornet. Now the readout also explains that the aircraft was traveling at 252 knots and in a 5-degree turn, and the unknown object was approximately 4.4 nautical miles away. Now the video shows the Super Hornet's weapon system operator repeatedly trying to acquire the UFO with the ATF's built-in auto tracker, which can pick out an object and keep it centered on camera. After 2 tries, the weapon system officer, or WSO, shouts, "Whoa, got it," to which another person assumed to be the pilot says, "Woohoo, whoa, what the bleep is that thing?" the pilot asks. The WSO later says, "Oh my gosh, dude," to which the pilot replies, "Whoa, what is that, man?" Now this is where the skeptics start asking, okay, but Alexa, how is this unknown object different from weird government aircrafts we don't know about? Well, doubters, let me count thy ways, because apparently I'm an expert at this point. For starters, the UFO doesn't have any kind of hot exhaust trail that would be emitted by a conventional turbine engine, appearing to emit no heat on the ATF sensor, and secondly, the UFO doesn't have any visible wings or fins. Through my research, I've learned that even cruise missiles such as the American Tomahawk or Russian Kaliber have small winglets that should be visible, and other missiles such as the Maverick anti-tank missile have little stubby fins. This UFO is oval-like and does not appear to fly nose first in the direction of travel, so the science doesn't make sense to me. But hey, if you're an expert, let me know. Correct me. Go nuts. Number 3, the 2004 series of spottings. So on November 14th of 2004, Lieutenant Alex D. Trick was piloting her FA-18 Super Hornet when she observed an oblong object hovering over the water. It leapt into motion, skimming 500 to 1,000 feet over the waves at around 500 knots. Now the fighter jet's onboard radar couldn't detect the object, but Alex's weapon system operator in the rear seat witnessed it as well. Alex has quoted her recollection as, "We were trying to call out what we were seeing to each other and to make sure everybody else is seeing it. It's moving so erratically and so fast that our voices, our minds, and then even our radio calls can't keep up with it." So here's the thing, the majority of credible modern day UFO sightings can be credited to those that work in the Air Force, and if I haven't mentioned it already, it should be noted that military pilots are trained to see all the aircrafts by their shapes, paint schemes, unit insignia, they're trained to recognize this stuff and know it off the top of their head. On one of the other Super Hornets that launched behind Alex was Lieutenant Commander Chad Underwood, who was able to capture the object on an infrared camera. It's around 40 feet long, round and smooth, and quickly received the nickname Tic Tac. Now all of the footage that the US government has confirmed as authentic and unexplained speak for itself, since I know we have the clip handy. And around this time, starting on November 10th to be exact, Gary Voorhees, a petty officer on the USS Princeton guided missile cruiser, had been reporting apparitions on his radar screens in the same area. Triple checking his equipment before he made his report, and being the main technician responsible for the equipment, along with having 6 years of Navy experience at the time, he described what he was seeing as impossible. In just seconds, an object had dropped to the waterline from 60,000 feet, hovered, and then zipped away at high velocity, making right-angle turns that were quoted as being confounding and defying gravity. Not alphaba. The objects returned for the next week, with Voorhees quoted as saying, "I was able to see it on the horizon during the night and during the day, and it was definitely a glowing object. Could I tell you for 100% certainty what it was we were tracking?" Now footage of this event used to exist, with Gary being able to vividly describe his memories, but has since been scrubbed from the internet. I'm not surprised, you shouldn't be either. Things tend to just go poof, when they're a little too true. Number 2, the Washington Flap. At 11:40 p.m. on Saturday, July 19th of 1952, Edward Nugent, an air traffic controller at the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, try saying that 5 times fast, spotted 7 objects on his radar. The objects were around 24 kilometers south-southwest of the city, not following any established flight paths, and no known aircrafts were in the area. Now his superior, Harry Barnes, a senior air traffic controller at said airport, watched the objects on the radar scope, later writing that they knew immediately that a very strange situation existed. What do you know? The movements were completely radical compared to those of an ordinary aircraft. Harry had 2 controllers check Edward's radar, and they found it was working normally. He then called National Airport's radar-equipped control tower, and the controllers there said that they had unidentified blips on their radar screen and saw a hovering bright light in the sky that was moving at speeds they couldn't understand. Now at this point, other objects appeared in all sectors of the radar scope, and when they moved over the White House and the United States Capitol, Harry then called the Andrews Air Force Base, which was located around 10 miles away. Although they reported they had no unusual objects on their radar, an airman soon called the base's control tower to report the sighting of a strange object. Airman William Brady, who was in the tower, saw an object which appeared to be like an orange ball of fire, trailing a tail, saying it was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Where have I heard that phrase today? Now as he tried to alert the other personnel in the tower, the strange object took off at an unbelievable speed. On one of National Airport's runways, pilot S.C. Pierman was waiting in the cockpit of his plane for permission to take off, and after spotting what he believed to be a meteor, he was told that the control tower's radar had detected unknown objects closing in on his position. Now he observed 6 objects that he described as white, tailless, fast-moving lights over a 14-minute period. He was in radio contact with Harry during his sighting, and Harry later reported that each sighting coincided with a pip that could be seen near his plane. When he reported the lights streaked off at a high speed and disappeared on their scope. Meanwhile, back at the Andrews Air Force Base, Staff Sergeant Charles Davenport observed an orange-red light to the south where the light would appear to stand still, then make an abrupt change in direction and altitude, with the phenomena happening over several times. Now at one point, both radar sensors at National Airport and the radar at Andrews Air Force Base were tracking an object hovering over a radio beacon. The object vanished in all 3 radar sensors at the same time. At 3 a.m., shortly before 2 United States Air Force F-94 Starfire jet fighters from the Newcastle Air Force Base in Delaware arrived over Washington, all of the objects vanished from the radar at National Airport. However, when the jets ran low on fuel and left, the objects returned, which convinced Harry that the UFOs were monitoring radio traffic and behaving accordingly. The objects were last detected by radar at 5:30 a.m., and the government later tried dismissing the events of that day on a temperature blip, but those who were present have been adamant otherwise, and I'm gonna believe them. Number 1, the Aguadilla UAP. Jonathan Lace, spokesman for the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, SCU for short, explained the organization believes the most compelling footage of anomalous activity ever was taken by a Homeland Security aircraft over Puerto Rico on April 25th of 2013. I'll let you folks make up your own minds in the comments, by the way. The video was captured at around 9:20 p.m. on that fateful day as an unknown object flew across the runway of the Rafael Hernandez Airport in Aguadilla and was caught on infrared camera by a U.S. Customs and Border Protection aircraft, the footage of which was leaked to SCU by an anonymous source. The eerie footage shows an object believed to be up to 5 feet in length, moving at speeds of up to 120 miles per hour, getting close to the ground before seemingly plunging into the ocean and splitting into 2. In a 50-page report, the SCU has made notes that no bird, no balloon, no aircraft, and no known drones have that capability. It also appears to not disturb the water when plunging beneath and then re-emerging from the surface, a phenomenon known as transmedium travel. SCU investigators said the object appears to be of unknown origin after spending 1,000 hours researching it. It is claimed the pilots of a DHC-8 turboprop spotted a red light over the ocean. They then contacted the control tower, who told them they did not know the identity of the object, and then the object's lights went out as it approached the shore. The plane then emerged from its thermal imaging camera. The plane then engaged its thermal imaging camera and went on to follow the UAP. The SCU report concluded by saying that the video is the best documentation of an unknown aerial and submerged nautical object exhibiting advanced technology ever seen. They have since called for the release of more data from the Pentagon, after the release of a lot of footage recently. And in their statement, the SCU said that they believe all government data regarding unidentified aerospace objects should be made available to the public to be openly investigated by the broader scientific community, provided that such data does not compromise sources or methods of collection. A full scientific investigation of such, information would be able to uncover valuable information relating to both national security and advancement of our understanding of physics, aerospace engineering, and our world. Here's to hoping the Pentagon listens someday and releases that footage. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times, but they really need to stop being so cagey about what they release. They really don't release information unless they're forced to. And while I hate sounding like a broken record, they need to do better.
Starting off this list in our number 5 spot, we have Project Grudge Report 13. Okay, so I've read quite a few different UFO sighting stories and stories of alleged alien abductions, and this is fully one of the most terrifying that I have ever heard of. So basically, the story starts off in March of 1956 when Air Force Sergeant Jonathan P. Lovett was assisting assisting Major William Cunningham in the White Sands Missile Testing Grounds near Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. The pair were out searching for debris from a recent rocket test when Major Cunningham heard a loud scream. His first thought was that Sergeant Lovett had been bitten by a snake, so he went around to help aid his partner when he allegedly saw something he never expected. He recounted seeing the sergeant being dragged away by some sort of long serpentine arm that had wrapped around his legs. Whatever this creature was, it was connected to a hovering silver disc that was in the air about 15 feet away. The major stood there in horror as he watched this creature and the sergeant retreat into the craft, which then rose vertically into the sky. Of course, he radioed for help, and while he was taken to the hospital for observation, search teams were sent out immediately. It wouldn't happen until 3 days later that they would find the body of Sergeant Lovett, only 10 miles from the site where he was said to have disappeared from. The autopsy performed on him later also only raised more questions than answers, as his body was severely harmed. So of course there was an investigation that happened, and many people claim this investigation was detailed in a 600-page document labeled Project Grudge Report 13. But the problem with this is that no official information on Report 13 exists, and the US government denies its very existence. Though Grudge Reports 1 through 12 have been declassified, along with Report 14, no official mention or accounting of Report 13 exists, and the story solely relies on secondhand accounts of the horrible incident. In our number 4 spot today, we have the cigar-shaped UFO. Okay, so let's set the stage. It's 2:45 a.m. on July 24th, 1948, and there are 20 passengers aboard a twin-engine propeller plane that is at 5,000 feet, being flown from Houston to Atlanta by pilot Clarence S. Childs and co-pilot John B. Whitted. Out of the 20 passengers on board, 19 of them are asleep at these early morning hours, and everything seems to be going as per usual until it wasn't. The 2 pilots and the 1 passenger who was awake all witnessed the same thing about 20 miles southeast of Montgomery, Alabama. About a week after the incident, the pilot explained what he had seen by saying, quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and a lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light. By his estimates, he watched the UFO for about 10 seconds before it completely vanished." The co-pilot gave a similar explanation and also added, quote, "The object was cigar-shaped and seemed to be about 100 feet in length. The fuselage appeared to be about 3 times the circumference of a B-29 fuselage. It had 2 rows of windows, an upper and a lower. The windows were very large and seemed square. They were white with light, which seemed to be caused by some type of combustion. I asked Captain Childs what we had just seen, and he said that he didn't know." Well, this is obviously all very strange and peculiar. What has driven UFO enthusiasts even more is the fact that this strange sighting was of course later investigated by the US government, but the results of that investigation have allegedly been mostly destroyed. Does that mean that they found something they aren't willing to share yet? Some believe that perhaps the pilots and the passenger witnessed a secret Soviet spycraft, while others believe it was definitely something of the extraterrestrial variety. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Lubbock incident. On August 25th, 1951 in Lubbock, Texas, a group of scientists from the Texas Technical College were all hanging out in the backyard of geology professor Dr. W.I. Robinson. They were all just chilling, enjoying each other's company, until around 9:20 p.m. when they saw something very strange. It was a V-shaped formation of 15 to 30 bluish-green lights passing overhead. They were completely confused over what it could be, but figured that the lights would likely reappear, which they did. About an hour later, the lights reappeared, and at this point, all of these scientists knew that they had witnessed something exceptionally interesting, but what was it? The scientists weren't the only ones to witness the lights either. About 350 miles away in Albuquerque, New Mexico, an employee of the Atomic Energy Commission's top secret Sandia Corporation, who had a high-level Q security clearance, had been sitting outside with his wife, quote, gazing at the night sky, commenting on how beautiful it was, when both of them were startled at the sight of a huge airplane flying swiftly and silently over their home. On the aft edge of the wings, there were 6 to 8 pairs of soft, glowing bluish lights. There were more sightings as well, all reporting a similar thing. The group of scientists scientists began investigating, tracking the lights, which they witnessed 12 more times. They measured the angle of the lights, they tracked the speed, and they attempted, unsuccessfully, to try and measure the UFO's altitude. Here's the deal with this though. The government did end up investigating, but the official explanation for these lights is the most cryptic message I've ever seen. It read, quote, "I thought that the professor's lights might have been some kind of birds reflecting the light from mercury vapor streetlights, but I was wrong. They weren't birds. They weren't refracted light, but they weren't spaceships. The lights that the professor saw have been positively identified as a very commonplace and easily explainable natural phenomena." I can't divulge exactly the way the answer was found because it is an interesting story of how a scientist set up complete instrumentation to track down the lights. Telling the story would lead to his identity, and in exchange for his story, I promised the man complete anonymity. Despite people claiming that the mystery has been solved, by this explanation, people are left with a lot more questions than answers. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Shag Harbor incident. This UFO encounter is often referred to as Canada's Roswell, so I was shocked that I hadn't heard of it before. Basically, this incident took place on October 4th, 1967, when an unknown object crashed into the water near Shag Harbor, which is a tiny town in Nova Scotia. There were at least 11 people who witnessed this object as it crashed, and many people claimed to have heard a whistling sound followed by a loud bang when the crash took place. The witnesses that claimed to have seen the UFO were all doing a bunch of different things at the time. One couple was just sitting on their porch, but the 2 witnesses that really get me are a flight pilot and a ship captain. On Air Canada Flight 305, First Officer Robert Ralph pointed out to Captain Pierre Charbonneau that there was something strange at the left side of the aircraft. They reported an object tracking along on a parallel course a few miles away and described it as a brilliantly lit rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing the object. Shortly after they first noticed it, there was a large but silent explosion near the unknown object, and then 2 minutes later there was a second explosion, but this one faded to a blue cloud. As for the ship captain, Captain Leo Howard Mercy, he saw 4 blips on his Decca radar that were totally stationary. This led to him looking up to the sky, and that is when he saw 4 bright objects sitting in a rectangular formation about 28 kilometers from the vessel's window. He wasn't the only one who saw it on board. The entire crew of nearly 20 fishermen stood on deck and watched. A man named Laurie Wickens was another one of the witnesses, and he and some of his friends ended up calling the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, because they saw a huge object floating in the Atlantic Ocean about 1,000 feet off of the shore. This is all super weird, and not only the RCMP, but also the Royal Canadian Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force became involved in investigation, but nothing was ever recovered or found. But it was also revealed that all commercial, private, and military aircrafts along the eastern seaboard were accounted for, so what could have all these witnesses seen? Since they have never officially identified what it was in the official Government of Canada documents, it is listed as a UFO. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Westall incident. Taking it back to 1966, we have the largest mass UFO sighting in Australia that at the time was largely ignored. This incident took place when over 300 students and staff members of a school in Melbourne all witnessed multiple UFOs silently flying through the air before they landed in a nearby field. Well, there's been a ton of speculation about this incident in the many years it's been. One witness account stands out among the rest, and that is the account made by the science teacher from the school, Andrew Greenwood. He was alerted to the UFO event by a hysterical student, and when he went outside to see for himself, everything changed. Previously a skeptic of UFO stories, Andrew's mind was abruptly changed when he saw, as he described it, a round silver object about the size of a car with a metal rod sticking up in the air. He went on to explain that suddenly 5 planes came and surrounded the object, all while more people were gathering to watch. He called what happened next the most amazing flying he has ever seen, explaining that, quote, every time they got too close to the object it would slowly accelerate, then rapidly accelerate, and then move away from them and stop. Then they would take off after it again, and the same thing would happen. This went on for about 20 minutes before the mysterious object just vanished. As weird as this all was, what was almost weirder was what happened next. Firstly, the headmaster of the school is said to have tried to put a stop to anyone talking about the incident at all, threatening severe punishment to any student or staff who was caught speaking about it, and when the Royal Australian Air Force contacted him, he refused to talk to them at all about it. There have also been stories of witnesses
getting visits from people warning them not to speak of the incident. Andrew explained, quote, when he asked the physical education teacher to describe what she had seen herself so that he could compare it with his own observation, she just wouldn't say anything. Another witness who did talk to Andrew and described what she had seen in great detail, just 30 minutes later refused to speak to him and wouldn't say a word. Was this because of the threats from the headmaster, or was something else going on here? This is definitely one strange UFO story that leaves behind a lot of questions.
Number 5. Japan sighting. Our first sighting comes to us from Japan, where a man looked out his window one day in time to see an amazing sight, only for it to disappear before he could get his family to look at it. The following is his story as he related it. My name is Tatsumi Tanaka. I am 42 years old and the owner of a beauty parlor in Inaka City, Gunma Prefecture. Last Sunday, I saw a UFO, and it was the first time such a shocking matter happened to me. I never believed that I would have such an experience, but surprisingly, it happened to me. I was on the second floor of my house and casually looking out the east window when I caught sight of a white object, rather big, the shape impossible to describe, rising softly and perpendicularly from the surface of the ground. We see Mount Akagi in the northeast direction, and it was in this direction that the UFO rose, but I could not tell how far away it was. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning. I wondered what it was. I thought at first sight it must be an airship or a balloon. I strained my eyes to see better, but could not understand what it was. After rising straight up, it stayed for a while at a constant height and seemed to become blurred outside. It then turned into the oval shape that is familiar to us from TV or magazines. It was the same object, but not the same shape as before, but the outline was not clear. Soon after, it moved to the right at fast speed. It looked like a low-altitude flight, but it all happened so quickly, and then it just disappeared into the cloudless blue sky. I was so shocked, I fell out of my mind. This thing was so huge, but it disappeared just in a moment. I tried to explain what I saw to my wife and child who were right beside me, but I couldn't. I just pointed and could only shout out in surprise. My wife was very annoyed and said that everyone cannot see UFOs, only some people do and some don't. By then it had disappeared. I was so excited that I went outside with my daughter and searched the sky. But it was too late. I still can't believe I have had such an experience. I will never forget that movement and that speed. Something beyond common sense. It means to me that things exist that we don't understand. Number 4. New Zealand. Next, we have a story from New Zealand where a woman was enjoying a nice day in her yard when she saw a craft unlike anything she'd seen before. This is her story in her own words. My name is Edith Perkins. At 8:30 p.m. Monday, I was doing some chores in our backyard. This is in Bexley, just north of Christchurch, South Island, New Zealand. I saw something in the sky, like a capsule or cigar-shaped object. At first, it had a silver whitish body with a darker gray forked tail. While I looked at it, it was just overhead, seeming to be coming closer. I was facing west. The rounded edges, front and back of the object, called my attention to it initially. Its size appeared to be 10 centimeters long if held at arm's length. I suppose it was about 30,000 feet high, but it seemed very puzzling that there was no jet trail behind it. So, I went indoors to fetch a pair of 7x35 binoculars. My husband joined me and our home care nurse. As we three watched, a very bright light completely covered the object. It did not happen as a flash of light. It seemed to start up and then finish with a burst of light. I was seeing a different rear design on the craft with a forked end to it, and the color was now dark gray. Another burst of light occurred, and the object presented a rim all around the craft, with either intermittent colored lights on the rim, or else the rim was composed of rotating colored lights. These were in tones of reddish orange. This object then flew out over Pegasus Bay towards the northeast. Number 3. Papua New Guinea. Our story from Papua New Guinea involves a young man whose entire community was brought to a chilled hush when a strange craft came to town for a closer look at humanity. As he put it, my name is Alex James. I live in Pilla Pilla Community, New Guinea. About 7 p.m. last Tuesday, I went with 4 friends to Pilla Pilla Community School for rugby practice. We were going back to our village after dark when we saw some bright lights approaching. There were a lot of people about, some coming back from bathing, and others sitting around eating their dinners. When they saw the light, they all ran inside and locked their doors, except for a few of us who just stood and stared. As the UFO approached us, we heard no sound. The street lights all dimmed just like a torch when the batteries are failing. It hovered over the coconut palms and looked huge. It was oblong in shape. It passed slowly overhead. My friends and I were almost frozen as we watched it. We felt as though we could not move or speak. speak, because we were so shocked by the sight. The bottom of the UFO was oblong-shaped, with very bright lights all around the edges. At the top was a pyramid-like shape, with lights around it also. Just bright white. No colors. It was huge and took over 30 minutes to pass by. We checked the time. When it was hovering over us, it seemed to be as bright as day. The whole place was lit up like bright daylight. That's how bright its lights were. Then the object just disappeared in the direction of the mountains near Vuvu. Number 2. Zimbabwe sighting. Our next tale comes to us from a journalist named Allen Hein, who interviewed a teenager named Lloyd, who witnessed not only a strange craft, but alien life forms when he was awoken late one night. The following is quoted directly from her report. At between 1 and 1:30, he woke up, and because he knew it would be quiet at that hour, he decided to do some studying for his exams. Whilst thus engaged, he heard a clicking sound. It continued for some minutes, so Lloyd decided to check what it could be. He opened the front door and looked outside. He could hear the sound coming from up the road, and when he glanced in that direction, he witnessed something very strange. He quickly went outside and hid behind a hedge to get a better view. He was able to observe a small figure about a meter high, with a head like a rugby ball, dressed in white overalls. On its back, the creature had a small satchel, attached to which was an aerial with a flashing red light. Lloyd was terrified. He told me he was asphyxiated with fear and ran back into the house, jumped into bed, and covered himself with his blankets. He slept fitfully for the rest of the night. At 6 the next morning, he went to look where the creature had walked and found several footprints which he could not identify and which he attributed to the creature. When he arrived at school, he told his friends about seeing a ghost in the night, but one of his friends suggested that it was a UFO. Lloyd is now under the impression that the creature is called a UFO. Number 1. Australia sighting. Our final tale of the day comes from a man by the name of Patrick Knowles. He was on a road trip with his family when they discovered a close encounter more terrifying than he could have possibly imagined. In his own words, it happened on January 20th. My mother, 2 brothers, and I were driving from Perth to Melbourne. We were going to drive straight through in shifts, and we planned to cross the desert at night when the heat wasn't so bad. By 2:30 a.m., we were in the Nullarbor Plain. We stopped for petrol and switched drivers. Sean was driving, and I was in the front seat next to him. The road was empty. Suddenly, we saw a bright yellow light up ahead, and Sean slowed down. As we got closer, the yellow light seemed to be emanating from an egg-shaped object hovering just above ground level. We thought we might be seeing things, but then a caravan passed, going the other way, and it swerved sharply to avoid the luminous egg. The closer we got to it, the more we realized it wasn't a normal vehicle, or a road signal, or anything like that. Sean swerved to avoid it, and we continued on, leaving it behind. Suddenly, the object started towards us. It appeared to accelerate with tremendous speed. We drove on, and it literally chased us. The faster we went to get away from it, the faster this object went after us. I reckon we reached a speed of 125 miles per hour, but it caught up in a matter of seconds. Then Sean made a sudden U-turn and headed back west in the direction of the petrol station. The UFO also turned around. I don't know how the hell it was flying, because it didn't have any wings or anything like wings. It just kept coming after us. Sean made another fast U-turn, heading back towards Melbourne again, but the UFO turned as well and kept pace with the car. In the back seat, everyone was scared. The dogs started barking and whining. Then, suddenly, we were hit. It shot a beam of light out and punctured our back tire. The back tire was on fire. We started sliding across the road. I realized if we braked, we would have to confront the UFO, but Sean didn't have any choice. Then it landed on the roof of the car and picked the car up. It lit up the car like a microwave. The heat was intense. Our hair was standing straight up and we felt really funny, like we were being dehydrated. It was awful, frightening, like our brains were being sucked out. My fear was that I would be pulled out of my body. I put my hand out of the window and touched something spongy that burned my hand. I thought we were going to die. You could actually feel the car rising in the air. The car began to fill with a thick black fog. It was so hot, and all this soot, this junk started covering us. Our voices started changing. You know how a tape deck sounds when the batteries start to go flat. That's what it was like. Then I passed out. I came to when I heard a tremendous noise like a bang, and our car suddenly dropped back to Earth. Dawn was coming up. The thing just flew away, and that was the last we saw of it. I had to change the tire, and we tried to clean out the black soot. There were marks on the roof of the car. As soon as we could, we drove fast to the nearest roadhouse. We were too shocked to talk for a while. Then we realized we had lost a couple hours' time during the incident. We called the police. The funny thing was, they were already looking for us. Someone, maybe the people in the caravan we passed, had phoned the police anonymously. Their report states that they witnessed our car being picked up off off the road and shaken violently. They noticed the car was covered in black ash. The police inspected our car and noted the ash, the bad smell, and the dents on the roof. They were convinced something had occurred. They took us to the hospital, where we were treated for burns and shock.
First off, Pentagon's UFO tracking efforts still find no alien origins. We're starting off with some revelations from the Pentagon. The head of their UFO Incidents Investigation Office has testified to Congress, and it seems they've got 650 cases on their hands right now. And before you ask, apparently they've found no evidence of extraterrestrial life yet, or at least that's what they want us to believe. Right in the middle of a rare open congressional hearing on what the Pentagon is calling unexplained anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, they've dropped 2 new videos. They wanted to show how the newly formed All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, can explain some of these weird occurrences but is left scratching their heads at others. Now, I want to know, have you ever had a close encounter or spotted something in the sky that you just couldn't explain? Maybe you've seen strange lights, unusual shapes, or even alien creatures in real life? Share your experience in the comments. The first video, which is up on the Pentagon's website, is in color and dates back to July 12, 2022 in the Middle East. The second one gives us 2 different views of an incident reported over South Asia on January 15, 2023. The testimony from Kirkpatrick revealed that the AARO is currently reviewing over 650 UAP incidents. That's quite a leap from the 510 the US intelligence community reported in the last UAP report back in January. While the Pentagon has yet to officially recognize these UAPs as evidence of extraterrestrial life, numerous aspects of these videos have intrigued UFO enthusiasts and theorists alike who believe these could indeed be alien encounters. The truth behind these UAPs remains elusive, and the investigations by AARO are ongoing, yet these intriguing points leave us with more questions than answers. On to the next! For decades, our fascination with extraterrestrial and non-human life has been ignited by Hollywood's sci-fi movies. But today, that enthusiasm is stoked by something far more intriguing: authentic video footage released by none other than the US government. For many years, the idea of life beyond Earth has been a topic of fascination and speculation. From aliens in green spacesuits and giant spaceships, Hollywood has provided us with endless entertainment when it comes to extraterrestrial beings. However, it wasn't until recently that our curiosity was piqued by actual footage released by the US government. The release of authentic video footage showcasing unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, has caused a stir in the scientific community and among the general public. People are now asking questions about what these objects could be and whether they hold any significance for life beyond our planet. A former Navy pilot who has had first-hand experiences with UAP shared his own encounters and sheds light on the government's investigations into these mysterious flying objects. His advocacy for more government transparency and openness regarding UAP sightings adds another layer to already fascinating topic. So if a Navy pilot is advocating for transparency, that must mean he's seen otherworldly things, right? That's spooky to think about, considering how little the government keeps from us about extraterrestrial life. Next up, we're diving into an incident involving another UAP. Picture this: an entity with an uncanny resemblance to a jellyfish effortlessly gliding through a high-security military site before moving over a body of water. Now here's where things get interesting. This UAP then started a calculated descent, submerging itself beneath the water surface. But that's not all. After a suspenseful 17 minutes, this thing resurfaced and darted off into the distance at an incredible speed. Now, according to those who have seen the full footage or were present during this event, this UAP was completely invisible to night vision. Even more bizarre, it seemed to interfere with the targeting capabilities of the optical platform. But perhaps the most intriguing part is it demonstrated a form of positive lift, an ability to hover in the air without any visible means of lift or thrust. No propulsion maneuvers, no signatures, nothing. This incident is just one of many that have been reported and documented by credible sources, raising questions about whether we are alone in this vast universe. With the release of the Pentagon's report on UAPs, the topic has gained even more attention and sparked a renewed interest in the search for ET life. Some theories suggest that these UAPs could be advanced technology from other countries, while others believe they are of extraterrestrial origin. The truth is, we can't definitively say what these objects are or where they come from, but what we do know is that that their capabilities far surpass our current technological advancements. One possible explanation for the advanced technology displayed by UAPs is that they are using propulsion systems based on principles beyond our understanding. Another theory suggests that these objects are able to manipulate space-time, allowing them to travel vast distances in a short amount of time. But perhaps the most unsettling thought is that these UAPs could be controlled by intelligent beings who possess knowledge and abilities far beyond our own. If this is true, it raises important questions about our place in the universe and how we should approach the possibility of contact with extraterrestrial life. Continuing our exploration of UAPs, there's another often discussed theories. Some researchers propose that these unidentified objects could be evidence of time travelers from our own future. While this certainly ventures into the realm of science fiction, considering the far superior technological advancements displayed by these UAPs, theory that cannot be dismissed outright. The Customs and Border Patrol have released 10 videos, each one accompanied by a detailed report. These reports, spanning 387 pages, include news extracts and first-hand accounts of encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena. To give you a bit of insight, Chris Mellon, who served previously as a Secretary of Defense for Intelligence officials, believes these videos will help us all understand why these mysterious phenomena have become a matter of national security concern. He explains that these videos and reports are not meant to scare the public, but rather to inform them of potential threats that may be lurking in our skies. He also mentions that while some of these encounters can be explained by natural or man-made occurrences, there are still many cases that remain unexplained. On top of that, the release of these videos has sparked a debate among experts and the general public. Some believe that these phenomena could have extraterrestrial origins, while others argue for more rational explanations. Regardless of one's beliefs, there's no denying the significance of these videos and reports in shedding light on this intriguing topic. Moreover, with advanced technology becoming increasingly accessible to the public, more people are able to capture footage of unidentified aerial phenomena. This has led to a growing interest in the subject and an increase in reported sightings. The release of these videos by the Customs and Border Patrol is just one example of how government agencies are taking this matter seriously and working towards finding answers. The public's fascination with UFOs and extraterrestrial life has only grown over the years. With popular culture constantly referencing aliens and sightings, it's no surprise that these videos have caught the attention of so many. Some may argue that these videos and reports are simply fueling conspiracy theories, but others see them as a step towards uncovering the truth. In addition to the release of these videos, the government has also taken steps towards establishing a formal process for reporting and investigating UFO sightings. This shows a shift in attitude towards the topic and a recognition of its importance. It's clear that there is still much to be learned and understood about these mysterious phenomena, but with continued efforts from both government agencies and the public, we may one day have answers. However, the question remains, why is there such a strong interest in ETs and UFOs? One answer could lie in our inherent human desire to explore and understand the universe. We're naturally curious beings, always seeking answers, especially to the unexplained. There's also a certain thrill attached to the idea of being on the cusp of a great discovery that could change our understanding of life and our place in the universe. Right? And lastly, we have one more fascinating thing to bring to your attention today. NASA shared an intriguing video during a discussion about UFOs. The footage presents what appears to be an unidentified spherical object in flight. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Military officials have come forward stating they're at a loss. They simply cannot explain the nature of this object. So what do you think it could be? Could it be a top secret military aircraft that is still in its testing phases? Or could it possibly be an extraterrestrial spacecraft that has stumbled upon our planet? These are just a couple of the theories floating around regarding this mysterious object, but this isn't the first time something like this has happened. In fact, there have been numerous reports of UFO sightings over the years, with many being dismissed as hoaxes or natural phenomena. However, there are also those that have been left unexplained and continue to baffle scientists and civilians alike. One of the most well-known cases is the Roswell incident in 1947, where a mysterious object crashed near Roswell, New Mexico. The official explanation by the military was that it was a weather balloon balloon, but many believe it was actually a crashed alien spacecraft. This event sparked widespread interest in the topic of UFOs and has fueled numerous conspiracy theories. So what can we expect in the future? With advancements in technology and space exploration, it's possible that we may finally have concrete answers about these sightings. Who knows what else we'll find?
Let's venture together into the realms of the unidentified, where a photograph frozen in the storybook of time sparked a cascade of speculation and intrigue. Dated back to the sepia-tinged days of September 1971, this particular image, captured by aerial photographer Sergio Loaiza during a routine land survey over Costa Rica, continues to engage the age-old debate surrounding unidentified flying objects, UFOs, UAPs, whatever you call them. As Sergio soared over the lush landscapes, surveying the canvas below for the prospective construction of a hydroelectric project near the Areno volcano, little did he anticipate that a silent visitor from the cosmos would make a cameo in his frames. The photograph, initially unremarkable, encapsulates a saucer-like object poised mysteriously between the heavens and Earth, a metallic disc reflecting the sunlight against the vast backdrop of rainforest and lake. Claimed to be the pinnacle of UFO imagery, this snapshot has become a digital talisman, traversing the virtual landscapes of social media, eliciting gasps and sparking a lot of discussions. The story unravels further as Esteban Carranza, a Costa Rican citizen, steps into the limelight, wielding the contact copy of the original negative housed in the National Archives of Costa Rica. Acquired from his uncle, who in turn received it from the National Geographic Institute, Carranza has become the torchbearer of this peculiar artifact. So the photograph, taken at an altitude of 10,000 feet, reveals this shiny metallic enigma just suspended in the air. The Aero Commander F-680 aircraft, the makeshift time capsule of that moment, unintentionally hosted a guest that transcended the realms of conventional explanation. So Loaiza's automated 100-pound camera, which, whew, that's heavy, clicking away at 20-second intervals, immortalized this fleeting interstellar rendezvous. The image lay dormant, nestled in the archives, until Carranza, spurred by a sense of disclosure, released it to the world. This act of unveiling serves as a testament to the collaborative spirit that fuels the quest for the unknown. Carranza's revelation triggered a digital resurgence, and the photograph, like an otherworldly relic, rekindled its silent conversation with a world yearning for cosmic mysteries. However, the allure of the photograph extends beyond mere visual spectacle. It carries with it a lot of credibility, as claims do persist that it has weathered the relentless storm of skepticism. UAP media, utilizing the image, boldly asserts that the photograph has stood the test of time, remaining unscathed by the arrows of debunkers and skeptics. An object estimated to span the impressive range of 120 to 220 feet in diameter, suspended in the atmospheric ballet of 1971, continues to defy easy classification and has become a focal point for experts and researchers, who over the years subjected it to rigorous analysis. A lot of Costa Rican UFO researchers, alongside luminaries such as Dr. Richard Haynes and Dr. Jacques Vallée, lent their expertise to unravel the enigma. And their consensus, emboldened on the digital corridors of UAP media, resonates an object, not a product of double exposure or deliberate fabrication. And trust me, I might not be a complete expert, but I do know a good double exposure photo when I see one. I took a lot of photography in university. I do want a good camera. This is not that. How about we discuss a famous airport incident next? Jonathan Lace, spokesman for the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, explained the organization believes the most compelling footage of anomalous activity ever was taken by a Homeland Security aircraft over Puerto Rico on April 25th of 2013. I'll let all of you make up your own minds in the comments, but bear with me here. The visuals were captured at around 9:20 p.m. on that fateful day as an unknown object flew across the runway of the Rafael Hernandez Airport in Aguadilla and was caught on infrared camera by a U.S. Customs and Border Protection aircraft, the footage of which was leaked to the SCU by an anonymous source. That's kind of how things go around here. The eerie evidence shows an object believed to be up to 5 feet in length, moving at speeds of up to 120 miles per hour, getting close to the ground before seemingly plunging into the ocean and splitting into two. So in a 50-page report, the SCU has made notes that no birds, no balloons, no aircrafts, no known drones have that capability. Also, it didn't disturb the water when plunging beneath and then re-emerging from the surface, which this is a phenomenon known as transmedium travel. SCU investigators said the object appeared to be of unknown origin after spending 1,000 hours doing research. It is claimed that the pilots of a DHC-8 turboprop spotted a red light over the ocean. Then they contacted the control tower, who told them they didn't know what it was, and then the object's lights went out as it approached the shore. The plane then engaged its thermal imaging camera and went on to follow the UAP. The SCU report concluded by saying that the video is the best documentation of an unknown aerial and submerged nautical object exhibiting advanced technology ever seen. They have since called for the release of more data from the Pentagon after the release of the Tic Tac, Gimbal, and Go Fast videos. In their statement, the SCU said that they believe that all government data regarding unidentified aerospace objects should be made available to the public to be openly investigated by the broader scientific community, provided that such data does not compromise sources or methods of data collection. A full scientific investigation of such data would be able to uncover valuable information information relating to both national security and advancement of our understanding of physics, aerospace engineering, and our world. Here's to hoping somebody listens someday and releases that footage. Look, if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. But people in power really need to stop being so cagey about what they release. They really don't release information unless they're forced to. And while I hate sounding like a broken record, they need to do better. Looks like aliens really like human airports, so here we go again. At around 4:15 p.m. on November 7th of 2006, federal authorities at the Chicago O'Hare International Airport received a report that a group of 12 airport employees were witnessing a metallic saucer-shaped craft hovering over gate C-17. The object was first spotted by a ramp employee who was pushing back United Airlines Flight 446, which was departing Chicago for Charlotte, North Carolina. The employee made the flight's crew aware of the mysterious object above their aircraft. The unknown craft was also witnessed by pilots, airline management, and mechanics. No air traffic controllers saw the object, and it didn't show up on radar. Witnesses described the object as completely silent, 6 to 24 feet in diameter, and dark gray in color. Several independent witnesses outside of the airport also saw the object. One described a disc-shaped craft hovering over the airport, stating that it wasn't clouds, which was kind of obvious, since the object kinda went right through the clouds at high velocity, leaving a clear blue hole in the cloud layer, which closed itself shortly after the events. According to the Chicago Tribune's John Hilkovich, the disc was visible for approximately 5 minutes and was seen by close to a dozen United Airlines employees, ranging from pilots to supervisors, who heard chatter on the radio and raced out to view it. Both United Airlines and the Federal Aviation Administration initially denied that they had any information on the O'Hare UFO sighting until the Chicago Tribune newspaper filed a Freedom of Information Act request. The FAA then ordered an internal review of air traffic communications tapes to comply with the Chicago Tribune request, which subsequently uncovered a call by the United supervisor to an FAA manager in the airport tower concerning the UFO sighting. Well, if I haven't made myself obvious by now, I hate cover-ups, so I'm glad the Freedom of Information request was rightfully granted. The UFO investigators have argued that the FAA's refusal to look into the incident contradicts the agency's mandate to investigate possible security breaches at American airports, such as in this case. The National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena published a 155-page report on the sighting and has called for a government inquiry and also improved energy sensing technologies, because if an airborne object can hover for several minutes over a busy airport but not be registered on radar or seen visually from the control tower, it creates a potential threat to human safety. But once again, we got a lot of witnesses, a lot of credible proof. Next up on the docket, probably my favorite credible UFO spotting ever. On November 14th of 2004, Lieutenant Alex Dietrich was piloting her FA-18 Super Hornet when she observed an oblong object hovering over the water. It leapt into motion, skimming 500 to 1,000 feet over the waves at around 500 knots. The fighter jet's onboard radar couldn't detect the object, but Alex's weapons system operator witnessed it as well. Alex has quoted her recollection as saying, like, we're trying to call out what we're seeing to each other, make sure everybody else is seeing it. It's moving so erratically and so fast that our voices, our minds, and then the radio calls we can't keep up. This thing's going too fast. Now, here's the thing. The majority of credible modern-day UFO sightings can be credited to those that work in the Air Force, and it should be noted that military pilots are trained at spotting a lot of these things. It's a whole art. So when it comes to footage, photos from situations like this, they're pretty credible, folks. One of the other Super Hornets that launched behind Alex was Lieutenant Commander Chad Underwood, who was able to capture the object on an infrared camera. It was about 40 feet long, round and smooth, and quickly received the nickname Tic Tac. Now, we've all heard about the Tic Tac. It is one of the most popular spottings of all time, which is why we're going to talk about it again today. So around this time, starting on November 10th to be exact, Gary Voorhees, a petty officer on the USS Princeton guided missile cruiser, had been reporting apparitions on his radar screens in the same area. So we have not one, not two, but 3 situations where it's like, something's starting to add up here. Now, he was triple checking his equipment before he made his report, and since he was the main technician responsible for said equipment, along with having 6 years of Navy experience at the time, he knew what he was seeing, and he said it was impossible. In just seconds, an object had dropped to the waterline from 60,000 feet, hovered, and then zipped away at high velocity, making right-angle turns that were quoted as being confounding and defying gravity. This is not for you, Wicked fans. The objects returned for the next week, with Voorhees quoted as saying, "I was able to see it on the horizon during the day, during the night. It was definitely something glowing, and could I tell you what it was? Nope." Now, footage of that one did used to exist, and Gary's been able to vividly describe it, but it's since been scrubbed from the internet, so that's why we were mentioning all the things. Alrighty, I'll end today with a non-airport tale. On July 14th of 2001, drivers on the New Jersey Turnpike stopped on the highway just 15 minutes after midnight, where they marveled at the sight of strange orange and yellow lights in a V formation over the Arthur Kill Waterway between Staten Island, New York, and Carteret, New Jersey. Now, the police department over in New Jersey, specifically Lieutenant Daniel Tarrant, was one of the witnesses, as well as other metro area residents from the Throgs Neck Bridge on Long Island and Fort Lee, New Jersey, near the George Washington Bridge. Air traffic controllers initially denied that any airplanes, military jets, or space flights could have caused the mysterious lights. A National Weather Service meteorologist could find nothing in the weather to explain the lights. So, we got nothing. Luckily, when there's something strange in somebody's neighborhood, one can always call New York Strange Phenomena Investigators, or NYSBI. Apparently no Ghostbusters today, but we've got some help. This band of inquisitive minds claims to have discovered the FAA radar report from Newark International Airport on the night in question, which indicates an enormous number of airborne objects, without transponders, beginning at 10:31 p.m. and ending at 12:51 a.m. At least 15 people contacted the police department to report the strange lights, but Tarrant and other police officers are at a loss to explain just what was hovering in their skies. Now here's the thing, it's been a hot minute since this incident, and if there weren't any military folks in the air, and so many witnesses saw this, and we have visual proof of it, I'm leaning towards other. A few weekends ago, the weekend of March 9th to the 10th to be specific, Rock Springs City Attorney and longtime UFO investigator Richard Beckwith spotted something strange in the Wyoming sky, unlike anything else he had seen in his career. Thankfully for us, he captured this on camera. Now, what did he say? Well, he said, "I've never seen a UFO before I made this recording. We have the footage with us now, and I'd like for you folks to watch it." To me, it looks like a mix of yellowish, reddish, and orange spacecrafts that are all flying together, and they're all radiating lights. They're definitely flying in a way that doesn't make any logical sense when you consider human technology for aircrafts, unless the military wants to fess up right now about any tech they haven't told us about yet, which not gonna happen. And I'm including drones in my comparison, by the way. I've seen enough of those amateur and professional models of the little guys in action to know that this isn't that. So late in the evening on March 9th, Beckwith received a call from a friend who lived near Green River, about 15 miles southwest of where he was. So he grabbed his camera, his tripod, and what he witnessed once he got there came as a shock. He watched the object pulsating. It was moving rapidly from side to side. Now, Beckwith isn't trying to prove the object was an alien spacecraft, he's just trying to find an explanation. But you know where we stand on this. He has received a few potential leads on social media, but hasn't yet found any evidence as to what it could be. Now, it's time for him to dive into his investigation. He's done the right thing, he requested radar records from the FAA and connected with other witnesses. Gathering this information will help him find a reasonable explanation, or it might help him determine if it's truly a UFO. We do have a quote from him. He spoke to a couple of press outlets. He said that using the locations of the two different groups of witnesses, including myself, the angle and the distance between those two, and the angles between them and the object, and trigonometry, I should be able to pretty easily determine the location and get a good estimate of the size of the object. Right now, I have no idea. Well, when it comes to me, math ain't my strong suit, never has been, so I'm gonna trust him on that front. He's still hunting, and I wish him luck getting those radar records. Look, he did the right thing by asking for them, but I doubt he's gonna get them. He's also been pleading for anybody with more information to email him, and I bet his inbox is already flooded. So, good luck, pal. Time to travel over to the Ukraine for our next video. I mean virtually, folks. That's not somewhere you wanna be vacationing anytime soon. I can't spell out why, because YuleTube rules, but I'm sure we're all pretty aware of current world events. So the 406th Battalion captured a UFO on tape with a drone on the front lines over in Ukraine, and the video in question was posted to Reddit about a month ago. User Lively420 described the video as exclusive footage submitted to the frontier conflict from a unit they support showing a UAP over the front lines in the Ukraine. So, let's watch the video. Yeah, you can see it zooming in on what looks like a flat disc UFO in a gray sky, and that's a pretty typical UFO shape, ergo makes sense to me. User Toru32 was kind enough to decipher the chatter in the video for everybody, so allow me to discuss what was being said. Why can't he fire missiles at us? What do you mean? Holy F. F word. What the F is this? I'm telling you it's UFO for sure. It's standing still. Zoom in more. It's standing still, do you see? Can't see anything on the thermal cameras. Maybe ram it? They couldn't make out the last sentence, but I'm sure you get the idea by this point. Not to sound like a broken record, but if military officials don't know what the bleep they're seeing in the sky, and these are folks trained to recognize aircrafts from all sorts of different ways of the world, I'm leaning once again towards UFO. It should be noted that a lot of these experts are trained at what they call REIS, which is the art of recognizing aircrafts by their shapes, paint schemes, unit insignia, and more. Hyperfixation to the max? Maybe, but it takes a very specific brain to remember all of that. And if something doesn't make sense to that person, being the expert, it falls under unknown. Some folks have tried to discredit this video by saying it looks like a ship in the water, but consider the following. This footage was taken over land, and the pros are using a thermal camera. Ergo, the distortion causing the air over the water temperature shift would be visible. I don't have any other theories, but let me know in the comments if you do. Also, if this is legit, this means that commercial quadcopter drones are able to detect UFOs, and that's pretty huge news. You could potentially blanket an area with a drone swarm, all armed with IR cameras pointed right up. Since drones don't have, meat pilots, they're able to perform maneuvers that would otherwise be impossible to endure the G-forces of with any conventional aircraft, so we could get some close approaches. Okay, Imagine this, somebody reports a sighting, you could have like 30 plus drones in the area in minutes to investigate in a non-hostile manner. I would be foaming at the mouth for that footage and clarity. Like, gimme, gimme, gimme. Here's another Reddit gem, footage from some skydivers. This is definitely a clip where you need to wait it out. Because sure, I was ready to dismiss this one at first. I was like, okay, very obvious balloons in the sky, hoax hat on, next, click off. But then I was scrolling through the comments and I realized I wasn't supposed to be paying attention to that. I was supposed to wait for the curious little white dotted formation to appear near the folks hanging out in the sky. User Emery X captioned this video by saying, "We're skydivers, so we know it's not us." Second white speck we've seen today, seemingly floating down, wind up high. Odd orbital looking activity around it when zoomed in. Thought maybe stabilization stuff, but the bugs flying around in the video don't have that problem. So right there, that rules out a lot of the obvious debunking possibilities. They mentioned later that they had conferred with the human in the sky, who had also seen the unknown white things, so that's even more confirmation of it being something unknown, ergo a UFO. I think some of the commenters summed up my feelings exactly. If it's not CGI or doctored, I don't know what the bleep that is. The movement of the fast moving white thing around the bigger white thing reminded some folks of the ping pong ball in a cup effect that Dave Fravor described when he first saw the Tic Tac, and I agree with that. To elaborate, retired Navy Commander David Fravor, I know, I should be formal, was commander of the FA-18F squadron on the Nimitz when he spotted that specific object during a flight off of the coast of Southern California on November 14th of 2004. Him and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich, who I've talked about a lot of times on this channel, were training with the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group about 100 miles southwest of San Diego. Now at the time, advanced radar on a ship that was part of their training group, the Princeton, detected what operators called multiple anomalous aerial vehicles over the horizon, descending 80,000 feet in less than a second. Fravor and Dietrich diverted to investigate. Fravor was like, "Dude, do you see that thing down there?" And they saw this little white tic-tac looking object that was kind of moving around above the whitewater area. Now during the trainings exercise, both of them each had a weapons system officer in the backseat of the plane. So there was 4 folks in airplanes just watching this thing for about 5 minutes. Fravor was like, "Okay, I'm going in, let's get a closer look." And he described the tic-tac object mirroring his movements. He's like, "It was aware we were there. The object was about the size of the plane, no markings, no wings, no exhaust plumes, and when he tried to cut it off, it accelerated so quickly that it just disappeared." He said it was detected roughly 60 miles away less than a minute later. Now later, he went on record as saying, "I think what we experienced was well beyond the material science and the capabilities that we had at the time, that we have currently, or that we're going to have in the next 10 to 20 years. I think this spotting was similar to that one, and I stand by that statement as well. This is technically both a Reddit and a TikTok post, and while I usually hesitate to use TikTok as any kind of reference with how much videos can be edited on that platform, this seemed legitimate enough for me. User Dylan's mom uploaded this gem, which, sidebar, such a cute username. The caption reads as follows. "On Friday, March 1st of 2024, around 6 p.m., I captured a strange black object moving and changing shape in the sky above Bennington, Vermont. I did use Google Photos to help stabilize the video, and I muted the background noises of all the traffic and my voice. The video quality isn't that great, so I do apologize for that. No other edits have been made though. If anyone has any ideas of what this could be, please feel free to leave a comment. I posted my video on my TikTok account, but I wanted to share it with all of you." And seems innocent enough. So in the video, you can see what looks like a typical sunset, and then at first what seems like a speck of dust or a plastic bag in the sky. But then the camera zooms in a smidge and focuses, and you can clearly tell that what we're looking at is some sort of dark flat UFO that's aimed in a way that, well, wouldn't make sense velocity-wise for any kind of human aircraft or drone. Some folks suggested it could be a black contrail, which if you're not familiar with the term, don't worry, neither was I until today. Contrails, which is short for condensation trails or vapor trails, are line-shaped clouds produced by aircraft engine exhaust or changes in air pressure, typically at aircraft's cruising altitudes several miles above Earth's surface. Look, I used to see jets flying in the air all the time growing up, and this was too precise in my opinion to be a contrail. It was too solid and didn't seem to break apart. Also, once again, what human spacecraft leaves black condensation behind? That just doesn't make sense. Alrighty folks, we're gonna end today with a story that I know has been on everybody's minds lately, and that's the monolith that popped up over near Hay Bluff. So last week, a hiker in Wales said he discovered this monolith, and it's kind of similar to those found around the world in 2020. Craig Muir, a builder, discovered the approximately 10-foot tall, I don't know what, during a regular hike, which means he's familiar with the area. Ergo, this wasn't just something left behind, some new discovery. This was something new that landed here on Earth. Originally, he was like, okay, it's a little bizarre. It might be a scientific media research thing collecting rainwater. But then he was like, okay, no, I'm wrong. This is too tall, too strange. What on earth? So he's like, okay, I'm gonna go investigate, which you're very brave to do so. He's like, okay, it's about 10 feet tall, kind of triangular, definitely stainless steel, maybe. At least that's what he knows. He's like, it seems hollow. I guess he knocked on it. And he's like, it seems like it would be pretty light. Which, hey, that all makes sense with what we know about UFOs. The column is similar to the monoliths discovered in a southwest Utah desert back in 2020. And there was also some that were discovered in like California, Texas, Florida, Wisconsin, Romania, and plenty of other places. Now, while the most famous artist later took credit for several of the US-based monoliths, nobody's claimed this one. So I'm betting on the aliens here with their advanced technology and advanced materials.